Yes, ma'am.
And in what capacity are you currently working for PGPD?
I'm currently a lieutenant on patrol.
How long have you held that position?
I think since 2008.
So back in 2016, you were in the same position?
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you worked with Tom Lewis?
My entire career.
So 20 years?
I think I started just before him, so a little
So
less.
a lengthy amount of time?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you consider him a close friend?
Yes.
After the events of August 9th, did you donate any money to Tom Lewis?
I did.
Or did you also participate in fundraisers?
I did.
Let's go to August 9th, 2016. Were you working that day?
I was.
What was your shift?
The 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. night shift.
And in what capacity were you working?
I was the nighttime watch commander.
What's a watch commander?
The supervisor of patrol and pretty much the chief of police after hours.
So did you have anything to do with the Citizens Academy that was happening that night?
No, ma'am.
At any point on August 9th, by the time you arrived to the Citizens Academy, did you speak with Lee Cole?
I did.
What did you speak about?
Prior to roll call, he asked me if I could let him in the armory to get some equipment.
What equipment was that?
It was equipment for, I think it was a chest protector or a throat protector for his role play scenario.
Okay, and did you know what it was about that role play scenario that he would need that protective gear for?
No.
Hey, were you able to get the gear from the armory?
We walked in there briefly, and then I told him the gear's not there. It was at Public Works at an off-site location, and we walked out.
What is an armory?
It's where we store most of our weapons and ammunition, and at that time we stored some ancillary things like some equipment, so I checked in there and it wasn't there.
And is the armory located on site of PGPD?
Yes.
Does everyone have access to the armory?
No.
What people, let's talk about just August of 2016, who had access to the armory?
I believe so. I believe it would be command staff and armorers or firearms instructors.
What's the reasoning behind not allowing everyone to have access to it?
Security.
Okay, and in August of 2016, I'm assuming that you had access if we were taking Lee Cole in there?
Yes, ma'am.
While you were speaking with Lee Cole, did you ever see a firearm?
Never.
Did you see the scenario being set up that night?
No.
When the shoot, don't shoot scenario was happening, where were you?
I was in the lieutenant's office.
What were you doing?
I was doing payroll.
Did you hear something that caught your attention?
I did.
What was that?
I heard I had assumed there was munitions that was being part of the role play, and I heard what I knew was not a munitions round because it was loud, and I said something out loud.
Okay. At first, when you said that you heard what you thought were munitions?
No. I'm sorry, let me correct myself. I heard what I knew was not a munitions round. It was louder, so I thought it was a live fire.
Are you familiar with the sounds of munitions?
I am.
And are you familiar with the sounds of live ammunition?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you a firearms instructor?
Yes, ma'am.
And what does that mean exactly?
I've been to a 40-hour school and other FTLE training where I am able to train other officers on the use of firearms and qualification purposes typically.
And who do you get the certification through?
I went to St. Petersburg, so state of Florida, a recognized school in St. Petersburg Junior College.
Well, then is it FDLE or the Florida Department of Law Enforcement that certifies you, or?
Correct, if I believe so. Then there's also a class that we had to take for FDLE requirements, and I took that too.
How often do you have to recertify?
For firearms training,
Or instructing?
I don't believe there is a recertification.
Right. And when did you become a firearms instructor?
That was a long time ago.
While you were with PGPD?
Yes, I would have to say 15, 18 years ago.
And you've never had to recertify?
No, ma'am. As an instructor.
As an instructor, okay. What about for training?
Annually.
And that's every sworn law enforcement officer?
Yes, ma'am.
So you said that you heard a sound that you knew wasn't simulation and it sounded live. How many of them did you hear?
A few, maybe 3, if I had to guess.
And what did you do after hearing those sounds?
I was in an office, and there was another officer, John Kennedy, that was in the next room, and there's a glass, and I said out loud to him, "That sounds like live fire," or something to that effect. And then I thought, or I said to myself, I'm sure glad I know there's a role play situation going on back in the back parking lot, otherwise I'd be extremely concerned.
What did you expect the weapon to be using during the shoot, don't shoot scenario was?
I thought it was all simulations.
And are there any kind of safety precautions that go along with using simulation weapons?
Yes.
And what are those?
When we do simulations training, the trainers make sure that the weapons are loaded with, first of all, we make sure that everybody that participates in an area does not have live ammunition or weapons of any sort, including knives. If we use vehicles, we search vehicles for any ammunition that might mistakenly be mixed in with the simulations ammunition. Then we check and double check and load the weapons to be used for the simulations exercise. We do have some safety precautions the Punta Gorda Police Department has done. We bought dedicated weapons that only chamber a live simulations round, and it's smaller than the capacity that we carry, which is .40 caliber.
And when you say simulation round, what do you mean?
It's a basically a chalk or paint pellet at the end of a 9mm round, or just slightly under 9mm.
And are simulation weapons a different color than ordinarily or normally?
The Punta Gorda Police Department made sure of that, and the Glock weapons that we use, we made sure to buy blue dedicated weapons with an offset barrel, so there was no mistaking. Simulations does allow other barrel transitions to the weapons, but we made sure that our Glocks were just blue and no other Glocks were used.
Do Punta Gorda Police Department secure the simulation weapon along with the ammunition in the armory as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you also a simulation instructor?
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you had that for?
12 to 15 years.
So you described the safety precautions that you go through when using simulation weapons. Does the safety gear also come into play at all? Is there a need for protection?
Yes.
And why is that?
It's mandatory through the training.
Okay, and can you tell us what protective gear is?
What's mandatory, or what is the gear?
But first of all, what is the gear?
Face, throat, and chest is what we mandatory.
That's mandatory. Okay, so anytime you're going to do either an event, a training, a demonstration, and there's simulation being used?
I've never been a part of a demonstration. I've only used simulations for training purposes only.
Okay. And so that was the gear. What did you say? Now, what do you mean by mandatory?
That's what we always use, and that's what simulations trains us to use.
So the night of August 9th, was Lee Cole dressed in any of the protective gear?
When I saw him, or later?
Either. At first?
At first, I don't recall him having a helmet, but he had, we typically tell all the participants not to have any exposed skin, and I remember he had a big gray sweatshirt with no exposed skin, and then later on, obviously, I saw him with a helmet on, or I don't know when I saw the helmet, but at some point I saw a helmet.
What's the need for safety precautions or even protective gear if all you're shooting are colored chalk pellets?
You have to protect the eyes.
Just the eyes?
Well, mainly the eyes, but you don't want your face to be hit by those.
And why the long sleeves and the long pants then?
Because they leave welts if you hit with them.
So it could cause some injury, is that what you're saying?
To an eye, absolutely, or to a throat. That's why they mandate that.
also said that when you're normally doing a search on, I guess, I would assume that when you talked about the safety precautions used for ammunition, the same kind of thing goes for live ammunition. If you were doing some kind of training scenario, everyone would still get patted down.
I don't understand the question.
Previously, when I asked you if there's any kind of safety precautions taken when using ammunition weapons, you told us how everyone gets patted down to make sure they've got no knives, no live ammo, anything like that. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and is that same kind of procedure also taken when real firearms are used?
No.
Never? Okay. Why?
Because we're not pointing them at each other.
Okay. So when would you use live firearms for training?
For qualification or tactical training.
No one is searched before that? There's no safety precautions before that?
Now, the safety precaution is make sure you treat all weapons as live. Do not point them at anybody at any circumstance.
Okay, but again, no one checks your weapon or your ammunition or your person to make sure that there's no live ammunition?
Maybe I'm confused. If you're talking about firearms training, we are using live ammunition in firearm training, so we don't search to make sure you're shooting live ammunition, so there's no need to make sure you don't have live ammunition. We expect you to have live ammunition.
Okay, so that's why you don't perform searches?
Correct.
Okay. What about actually checking the real firearm? Checking the ammunition that's being used? Does anything get checked?
Well, it depends on what type of training you're referring to. A lot of times we shoot, for qualification purposes, we shoot our duty ammunition, and we don't search, we don't do anything like that. Then we issue new duty ammunition after qualification. So we don't inspect the ammunition before they shoot it.
Okay, so I guess your answer is nothing then, when you're qualifying, I guess, with live firearms.
No, each officer is responsible for safety as well as the firearms instructor.
All right. Back in August of 2016, did you know if PGPD had blanks?
I did not.
And what are blanks?
Blanks are, it's a type of ammunition that does everything except a projectile does not come out.
So you did not know if PGPD had blank ammunition?
I did not.
Does that mean you never saw it in the armory?
That's correct.
So once you heard these shots, did you eventually go outside?
I did.
What did you observe when you got outside?
I observed a large group of participants from the group, and then I heard I couldn't see the role play scenario because the large group was in between me and them.
Okay, I'll stop you real quick. After the shots and you go outside and you see all of this, did anyone direct you to do anything?
Yes, I heard either on the radio or verbally or both somebody say, "Get EMS."
Okay. And what was your role immediately? What did you start doing?
Immediately, I was confused because I thought they were role playing.
Okay.
So
I guess when you realized then that something wasn't right, what was your
I was supervising to make sure that proper care and treatment was given to the person that needed it.
What about the crime scene? Did you secure that at all?
I did. I made sure officers put up crime scene tape and stayed on post, and rain was coming in. We also tried to put a tent up to protect the crime scene.
At any point on August 9th, I know that you said you didn't see it before the scenario, but afterwards, did you ever see the silver revolver that was involved?
Yes, ma'am.
And where did you see it at?
It was on the hood of the marked police car used in the scenario training.
And did you place it there?
I did not.
Do you know who did?
I do not.
Did you touch the firearm at any point?
I never touched the firearm.
Have you ever seen that firearm before?
I never saw that firearm ever.
When you saw it on the trunk, had it been cleared?
It had been, yes.
Do you know who cleared it?
I started to take photographs, and then Lieutenant Salzman started to pick it up, and he said he had already cleared it. So
What does it mean to, I guess, clear a firearm?
for the revolver, you just open the cylinder, and you can eject any rounds that would make it safe.
It's another safety kind of precaution?
Yes.
What's a safety officer?
In what context?
When you're using a firearm?
Again, for firearms training, we don't have safety officers.
Okay. Have you ever participated in an event like this?
No.
Have you ever done any kind of demonstration?
No.
You only use ammunition weapons.
I've used live fire weapons for training.
Okay, so regarding firearms, what is a safety officer?
For firearms training, each officer is responsible to make sure that they treat every weapon as loaded and they do not point it at anything that it could harm or injure. So each officer is responsible for their own safety on that. And there is a firearms instructor that makes sure and oversees that safety. However, sometimes the ratio is 1-6, 1-10. So the onus is really on the officers to make sure it is instilled in them. The cardinal rules of firearm safety is treat them all as if they're loaded and do not point them at anybody. So the firearms instructor makes sure that when we get on range, that's when we all point down range and nobody's there where they can get injured.
Okay, so are you saying that the firearms instructor is the safety officer?
I'm saying he's one of them, but each officer on firearms training only is responsible for safety.
Okay. So what about the scenario on August 9th? As a firearms instructor, would you expect there to be a safety officer?
Again, I can't answer it. Again, if you're using a live weapon and you don't point it at somebody, then
There's no need for one?
I'm not going to say there's no need for one. You can't harm somebody. If you're using a live weapon and you don't put your finger in the trigger and you don't pull the trigger, you cannot harm somebody unless you point it at them and then pull the trigger.
Okay. I guess I'm just kind of looking for a straighter answer.
I'm sorry.
So, can you always know for sure? I mean, is it guaranteed that a person is going to follow every direction and policy and procedure? I mean, you just have to accept that instead of designating somebody as a safety officer?
Well, I think we're getting confused with two different things. There's firearms training and there's munitions training. For firearms training, especially for firearms training, there's typically one firearms instructor for a smaller ratio of 6-10, and we, the firearms instructors, guide the officers on when to draw their weapon, and we make sure that downrange is always safe. But if it's a 1-10 ratio, the onus is also placed upon the officer not to take his weapon out of his holster, not to put his finger in the trigger, not to point it in a direction that's not safe.
Okay, so since you've never participated in any of these kind of academies or demonstrations, do you have any idea if a safety officer would have been necessary?
Well, for munitions training, we do use...
I'm not talking about simulation training. Let's say real revolver. Do you think it's necessary for a safety officer to be designated?
I would have to say no.
Okay. As a firearms instructor, you were saying in the use of a real firearm, there does not have to be a safety officer designated?
I'm just trying to say the safety is... There should be checks, yes. There should be double checks. And then the officer should make sure he doesn't point the live firearm at someone, is what I'm trying to say.
Since you weren't a part of it, do you have any idea if Lee Cole's firearm was checked that night?
I do not.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Okay. Defense counsel regarding Bridget states 27 through 34.
Okay.
Photographs?
I'm sorry?
There are photographs?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, 27 through 34 will be admitted into evidence.
If you take a look through those and just let me know if you recognize
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what are those?
These are photographs from the night of that incident.
Okay, and they clearly and accurately represent, represent August 9th, 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
Starting with states 27, what are we looking at?
That is where the scenario took place, to the rear of our facility, and that is, I believe that's Officer Jimenez and maybe Corporal Pribble putting up a tent, and you already see crime scene tape put up.
Okay, so this was the tent that you were talking about because it looked like it was on the rain?
It was getting really windy and it looks like the rain was coming, so we were trying to preserve the scene the best we could without moving anything.
And what is 28?
Looks like the same photograph, just maybe later after the tent was put up and from a different distance.
Okay, and the yellow tape around, that's the crime scene tape you're speaking of?
Yes, ma'am. That's the inner perimeter. We then put an outer perimeter of our parking lot a little later on, but yes.
And 29, that's when the tent is set up?
Yes, ma'am.
What is 30?
That's a picture of the unmarked vehicle used in the scenario and the driver's door with the bullet hole.
And do you know whose vehicle that was?
I believe that was a spare detective vehicle, if I recollect correctly.
And State's Exhibit 31, is that just a close-up of 30?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you tell us what that is?
That's a bullet hole.
Was that bullet hole there prior to the shoot-don't-shoot scenario on August 9th?
I do not believe so, no. I think I would have known that, but I don't think so.
And what is 32?
That's a picture of the revolver and the eyeglasses on the, I believe it was the trunk of the vehicle.
Whose eyeglasses?
I do not know.
And is that where you saw the revolver that you recently spoke of?
Yes, ma'am.
33? What is that?
That's a close-up, and I think that's, I can't remember who was holding it. That might have been Lieutenant Salzman, I'm not sure.
But this is the revolver we just saw on the car?
Yes, ma'am.
One moment. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Good afternoon.
Okay, so you were in law enforcement 20 years, is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you told the jury before that to certify to use your weapons, you have to do that annually, correct?
Yes, sir.
And every law enforcement officer has to do that, correct?
Yes, sir.
So annually, every law enforcement officer is taught the same things about gun safety, proper use of weapons, how to use the weapons, how not to point them, all the things you testified about, correct?
That's correct.
Lee Cole, do you know who he is? Do you know who Lee Cole is?
Yes, sir.
Is he a member of the Punta Gorda County or Punta Gorda Police Department?
Yes, sir.
But he also been required to do annual training every year, just like you did, to be arraigned and certified as a law enforcement officer.
Yes.
So every year that he was a law enforcement officer, he would have to get the same training to instruct him on the safety of how to use weapons, correct?
That's correct.
Now, the training scenarios you talked about with the simunitions, just to clarify what this is, the training scenarios with simunitions are actually force on force with officers intending to shoot at each other, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the reason that everybody's decked out in these things in the training scenarios that you're doing is because the detergent pellets in the scenarios can be shot at each other, correct?
That's correct.
It is a two-way issue as far as bullets coming at you in some degree, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, in a public demonstration, if the scenario is such that there is not a two-way scenario of bullets coming at you, that is different than the training scenario, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you actually are a firearms expert, correct? Or a firearms trainer?
Yes, I would call a trainer. I'm not an expert.
All right, but as a firearms expert, a trainer, you have been given training on how to teach others how to load firearms, use firearms, shoot firearms, that type of thing, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you've been around for 20 years, and you, I think, mentioned you thought you were a firearms trainer for like the last 18. Is that about right? Somewhere in there?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. When you were trained as a firearms trainer, did you receive any type of instruction on something called a wad cutter?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Did you ever use a wad cutter?
I don't believe so.
Did your agency ever carry wad cutters?
I do not believe so.
In the time that you have been a law enforcement officer, the primary weapon that's been issued was a semi-automatic, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you have any familiarity with wad cutters at any point during this as far as they relate to revolvers?
No.
Now, when Lee Cole came to you, you were the watch commander that night, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so he approached you about getting certain gear for the shoot, don't shoot, correct?
That's correct.
All right, so that was him undertaking some effort to get what would be safety things that he would need. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't have a problem trying to help him determine where those were at that point, correct?
No.
Okay. And so you did a check with him and went to the armory to take a look at things, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now you also, the agency also has, well, describe to the jury basically the size of the armory at the Punta Gorda Police Department.
It's relatively small. Maybe the size of the jury box.
Okay. And does the Punta Gorda Police Department then, because of the size of the armory there, also have a storage facility that they also store additional matters in?
Yes.
Okay. And those are things like equipment, they're not the guns, correct?
Not the guns.
Okay. Now, although you were not aware as to whether the Punta Gorda Police Department carried blanks, you understood that the canine units used blanks, correct?
I did. I became aware of that, yes.
Okay. Now, the issue of whether there were blanks being, you weren't part of the issuing of ammunition there, correct?
I had access to the armory, so periodically we would issue ammunition to officers, yes.
Right. But in the issuing of the things with the canine, there was somebody over canine, correct?
Correct, yes.
And who was over canine, to your knowledge, who was over canine?
I believe it was Captain Woodard.
Okay? And then prior to Captain Woodard, who was over canine?
I believe it was Lieutenant Heck.
Okay. So if somebody in canine needed blanks for something they did, they would do what they do a requisition form, correct?
Yes.
And the requisition form then is something that permits the officer to have the agency give them appropriate or approved ammunition, correct?
Correct.
And the policies at the Punta Gorda Police Department on ammunition were either the agency issued it or the agency approved it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, in the time when you were there, was there a revolver that you were aware of that was used for training purposes?
Yes.
Okay. And what color was that revolver?
It was also silver, but it had a brown handle.
Okay. So the agency had a silver revolver that was used for training purposes. So if you wanted to load a blank and use it for the sound, you could use that revolver, correct?
My understanding is that revolver was only used for simunitions,
Right.
but in theory you could do what you said.
And to explain to the jury, besides the Simunitions blue gun, okay, Simunition also makes something that you can put in an actual gun to put the Simunition round in, right? Like a sleeve?
You can change out the barrel.
That's what I'm saying, you can change
Yeah.
the barrel out.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and you know about the sleeve you can put in to put a like a restrictor type of sleeve in it? You can take a regular gun and put the sleeve in it, it makes the hole smaller. Are you familiar with that?
No, in a semi-automatic?
No, in the revolver.
Oh, the discriminator.
Okay, good, right, you're still on the same page.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
for the revolver, there's discriminators, that metal rings that go in where the bullet goes before the bullet goes in, that would,
Permit a Simunition.
it permits a ammunition, but it also should prevent a live round from being fired.
Right.
Because
Now,
I'm sorry.
the discriminator rings do not permanently change the gun, correct? They can come in and out.
That's correct.
So, well, let me ask you this. The canine officers, were you aware within the agency, the canine officer within the agency would train with the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office and receive certified training there?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in the use of any weapon, well, let's start with this. A blank entered into a weapon, if used properly, is that safe?
Yes.
Okay. And properly using a blank is what? What direction are you aiming?
Either at the ground or in the air, not at someone.
Okay. And the canine officers that were there were the officers that would be responsible for using the blanks to train the canines and all their training, correct?
Correct.
You mentioned earlier when the state asked you questions that the officer who has the gun, is the officer who has the gun always the first level of responsibility to make sure that their gun is safe, that there's nothing in the gun that shouldn't be in the gun, things of that nature?
I do believe that.
Okay. If there was ever a situation, let's go to the Simunitions, okay? Because the Simunitions has special rules to deal with the force-on-force training where they're shooting at each other. If you were in a Simunitions training and an officer said, I've checked my gun, but the officer knew no one else has checked it yet, and you were going through the checks and double checks for the Simunitions training, does the officer who knows his gun has not been checked have a responsibility to raise that he has not gone through the secondary checks?
I do believe so, but the instructors would always check before we gave them to the students, and we would do a double check. So, excuse me, the instructor and the other the co-instructor would always do those checks and hand it to the officer, and they would do pretty much a third check to make sure what we handed them was not lethal.
Right. So if any of the instructors knew that there weren't secondary checks, they would have a duty to speak up about it before you hand the gun to somebody, right?
Correct. We always have small classes, and we always tell everybody safety is everybody's responsibility. So
after Officer Cole raised the gear to you and you guys went to look for it in the armory, how long do you think you were with him down in the armory looking for it?
seconds, less than a minute.
Okay. And once he left, you went to where?
Roll call,
Okay. Now, roll call for you was at what time?
6 p.m.
So Officer Cole was coming to you at some time before 6 p.m. for this, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this. As a firearms instructor, if you had been asked that night or someone had inquired of you that night to determine the difference between a blank and a wad cutter, could you have done that?
In hindsight, probably not.
Did you see them in hindsight? The wad cutter and the blank, what they look like?
I've done my own research, and they look eerily similar.
Just wait just one moment.
You mean? Can you redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Just to clarify, Mr. Romine just referred to you as a firearm instructor. You're not an instructor, correct? You're a trainer?
No, I am a firearms instructor.
You are an instructor.
They're synonymous pretty much in law enforcement.
Okay.
I don't instruct the academy, but I instruct or train officers of the Punta Gorda Police Department.
Does PGPD have a range master?
No, we use the Sheriff's Department range.
And did you say blanks are safe? That was your testimony?
Blanks, if they're not used in close quarters or pointed at someone, I believe they can be safe, yes.
Okay. I mean, do you have to take into account the fact, though, that they might be used in close quarters?
When I mean close quarters, I mean it pointed in close proximity to somebody's face or head or body or something of that nature is what I meant.
I apologize, I don't know if Mr. Romine asked you this specifically, but did you know of a training revolver that the department had?
There was a revolver that I described with the brown handle, a silver revolver that we use for munitions.
Okay, and that's what I thought. You're saying that one had a discriminator?
That one is the one we would use as munitions instructors, and we would either make sure or we would insert discriminators before we then inserted the munitions rounds.
Okay, so it could only take simulation?
No, ma'am, it could take live rounds. The discriminators would eliminate a live round from being fired from that.
Okay, and that was in the armory, you said?
Yeah, typically, yes.
Okay. When was the last time you saw that?
That weapon?
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall.
Has it been there a long time?
Yeah, it's been there quite some time. Yes.
Okay. And you didn't know that K-9 training required blanks?
I believe I did because I did I've never supervised a K-9, but I did a internal affairs investigation that delved into FDLE requirements, and I learned that blanks were part of that. But I did not know that the Punta Gorda Police Department would be the one supplying him with a blanks or a blanks gun. I knew he was trained by other agencies, and I just assumed that they produced or provided those.
Have you spoke with Mr. Romine about your testimony?
About my testimony? Right now? I've spoken to him before today.
Before today?
Yes.
Okay, and when was that?
Yesterday.
Okay. No further questions.
Sir, you may step down. Call your next witness.
State calls Lee Dewey.
This way, please. You can stand here, face the clerk to be sworn.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
This way, sir. Please watch your steps. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Make sure you speak into the microphone, please.
My name is Lee Dewey.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Dewey.
Good afternoon.
And could you spell your last name for the record for us, please?
Yes, it's D-E-W-E-Y.
And work, sir?
I have worked for Florida Department of Law Enforcement. I recently retired.
And what was your position at FDLE?
Yes, I worked as a senior crime analyst for Florida Department of Law Enforcement. My specialty was the crime scene investigation.
How long did you work there?
18 years.
What were your duties as a senior crime lab analyst?
My duties as a crime scene senior crime analyst is to respond to the request for help from different law enforcement agencies and to provide my experience and our resources in processing their crime scenes.
Before you retired, was there a particular lab that you worked at?
Yes, I worked at the Fort Myers crime lab.
How did you come to be involved in the investigation into the shooting at the Punta Gorda Police Department back in August of last year?
I was what you call on call, covering crime scenes that week, and I was notified by Shane Poward, the special agent in charge, assistant special agent in charge.
You were on duty, I guess, that night?
Yes,
Did you get called out to the police department?
yes,
Did you go there?
yes, I did.
Was there a storm coming in that night?
It had rained, and it was raining lightly when I got there.
What did you do when you got to the crime scene that night?
I'm not sure.
Let me ask you this. Do you remember what time you got there?
I may refer to my notes.
Refresh your recollection.
Yes. We arrived at 21:40 hours.
Did you get some kind of preliminary information?
Okay.
before that?
Yes, once I arrived, I got a preliminary briefing on what they knew at that time, what evidence they had seen, what actions they had taken, and walked through the basic area of the crime scene. The crime scene was already taped off with the yellow what we call crime scene tape, and there was nobody allowed in that area when I got there.
Did a little walkthrough by yourself through the crime scene?
An officer walked me through.
And is the officer pointing things out to you? when
Yes.
you walk through? At some point, was the scene cleared of everyone except for you?
That is correct. That's how we work.
Is there a tent? Is there a crime scene?
When I got there, they'd put a little garden tent over between the two cars to protect the scene, the evidence that was there on the scene.
Can you tell the jury what you saw when you walked through the crime scene and you're making these observations?
Certainly. When I got there, we were in the back parking lot of the Punta Gorda Police Department, and there were two cars back there, two law enforcement or police cars. One was pulled straight in, nose first, and the other one was backed in, nose out. They were parked right alongside each other with about space for another car in between them. And that's the area what I was talking about where the tent was, actually the legs were placed on top of the two cars, protecting that area between the two cars. As I walked around, I noticed several different things. There were some helmets, kind of like police or motorcycle helmets that were laying on the ground. There were some cartridge casings on the ground by the one vehicle. There was a revolver on the hood of one car. There was a semi-automatic handgun on the roof of the car. It had a blue plastic handle. There was a telephone, some glasses, and a few other miscellaneous things. And then there was cartridge casings on the ground right below where the revolver was on the car.
Can you explain to us what a cartridge casing is?
Yes, a cartridge casing is a term we use at the laboratory. That is the case that holds the propellant and the lead, and after those things are discharged, we just refer to that as a cartridge or a casing.
And you said you found some of those on the ground?
Yes, there were 3 of them on the ground, 4 of them actually. One was under the car.
And when you did this initial walkthrough, was K-9 Officer Lee Cole's patrol vehicle there at the parking lot?
I did not realize at the time that I was doing that, but I was told later on that the vehicle was in the parking lot.
What did you do at the crime scene that night?
Okay, my job at the crime scene is we go in, get an initial briefing. I go through and observe the crime scene, identify evidence. I go through and take pictures of the evidence as it is when I arrive. Then I go through and put down little markers, so you see little 1, 2, 3, 4, things like that. And I take pictures again. I take pictures, what we call establishing pictures, kind of like taken out so you can see the whole crime scene. Then I move in and take a picture of the evidence next to other things, so you know where they are in association with the wheel or with other evidence. And then I go and take close-up pictures of individual evidence. After that is done, I measure in each piece of evidence from known points in the parking lot. I then bag each piece of evidence and pick it up and bag it and transport it back to the crime laboratory.
When you take that evidence back to the crime laboratory, do you package it, seal it in any particular way?
Yes, when we bring it back, sometimes we photograph it for better documentation. And then we package each one in either brown paper bags or manila envelopes, and we seal them with evidence tape.
That was August the the night of August 9th, 2016. Did you go back the next day on August 10th?
Yes, we did.
And what did you do when you went back there the next day?
When we went back the next day, the purpose was to examine the car that we just mentioned, Lee Cole's patrol vehicle. As I said, somebody told me that night the vehicle was in there, and one of the agents I was working with from FDLE went over. We just did a look at the outside of the vehicle, and then he sealed it with tape so that it would not be tampered with.
Who was that agent that you were
Special Agent Gary Negrinelli.
And can you tell us where the tape was on the car?
Yes, tape's placed on the doors of the vehicle, the passenger doors, and the back tailgate door, so the vehicle could not be open without us knowing about it. It's a special tape that breaks very easily, and it can't be placed back in the same position, kind of like open it, close it back up. You can't do that with this kind of tape.
You processed the car on August 10th. Can you tell the jury what items of evidence you collected?
May I refer to my notes? Okay, when we went back to the vehicle, we looked, did an initial search of the front areas, passenger areas, computer areas, and things like that. And then when we opened the back storage compartment, we found a kind of like a big gun vault or a storage locker that you can lock up and secure. And when we opened that, we found that is where the ammunition was stored that may have been used in the exercise. Within that case, we found boxes of ammunition, several different types of ammunition, another handgun that was totally inoperable, and blank ammunition.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness with several exhibits?
You may.
Mr. Dewey, when you collected those items of evidence that you described, how did you package them?
I put them in individual paper bags, transported them back to the office, photographed them again, and then sealed them in separate individual bags, not paper bags, not plastic bags.
You put any sort of identifying marks on the bags? So you know what it
Yes,
is?
excuse me. Each bag is sealed with more of that tape we just described earlier. It's called crime scene tape. We seal the bag so it cannot be opened. We put our initials, we put the date that it's sealed, and we put a unique case number on there. And then on the bag, we actually write, exhibit number so-and-so and give a very small reminder of what's inside it.
Mr. Dewey, I'm going to approach you with the pre-marked for identification of states 34 through 59. And I'll ask you just to take a look at these for a moment. And when you have had a chance to look at them, please look up.
I have no objection. It's always.
So I think 34 was previously admitted, but 35 through 59 will be admitted into evidence per stipulation, and then,
This
I'm
is
agreeing on all those things.
okay,
60 through 113, Your Honor.
60 through 113 will also be admitted into evidence per stipulation.
Mr. Dewey, if you could look through that stack as well when you have a moment. recognize these photos?
Yes, I do.
These are photos that you took, and they fairly depict what you saw at the crime scene that night?
Yes, they do.
Okay. I'm going to publish states 34 first. Is this what you saw when this would have been on August 10th when the sun's out?
Yes, this is an initial scene. I would like all the evidence would have been collected now. And this is the two cars, like I said, facing in, facing out, and with the 10 over top.
Okay, I'm going to skip back to August 9th when you first arrived at the crime scene. Is this where you see some of that bad weather that was coming in that night?
That's correct. As we said, it was raining when I got there. And this would be, you can see the crime scene tape in the background. And this would be basically initial pictures. I arrived showing what I saw.
Show you states 73. Show those two patrol cars that you saw at the crime scene.
This is correct. This is again, this one is looking down between the two cars. Like I said, one facing out, one facing in.
We'll get to it, but this object you see on the ground next to the unmarked patrol car, what was that item?
That was one of the two helmets I told you I'd seen on the area.
Maybe 4 front of the patrol car and then another helmet.
Yeah, along the wall there, you see the black helmet. That was the other helmet that I saw.
State 77.
Again, the helmet from the other direction. This is one that was in between the two cars.
Sort of in your back towards that wall.
Yes, leaning against the wall and shooting out towards the police station.
States 79. Pointed out.
Yes.
What are these items that we see in the bottom right corner of state 79, sort of the upper right corner, and then also the upper left corner? What are those items that we saw there?
These are the 3 aluminum cartridge casings that I explained to you that I found that were on the ground by the one vehicle.
The cartridge casing in the upper left corner, it appears like it's bent or crushed in some way. Did you collect that casing?
Yes, I did.
Was it bent or crushed?
Yes, this is common in crime scenes when a lot of people are walking around with boots and things like that. Some inadvertently step on a piece of evidence, and the cartridge casings will bend when stepped on with significant force.
I'm sure you states 80. Where is that for you? What are you looking at in
Okay.
Exhibit 80?
Okay, this is a vehicle that was facing out, the one furthest from the initial scene. This is one facing out. You'll see on the hood in front of the, about a foot away from the windshield wiper there, that is a handgun. It was unloaded before I got there, and that's where it was placed. There's a pair of glasses alongside it, and then down on the ground, hard to see, but those are where the 3 cartridge casings were that we just saw in the other pictures.
States 82. Talk about how you utilized markers. Is that what you did in this?
Yes, that's correct. This is, again, this is where I found the items. This is where they were when I arrived. I've not moved anything yet. Just put the markers by them for easier identification in pictures like this and further reference in our reports.
The revolver that you collected from the hood of the car there, do you recall how many cylinders it had?
It's 5.
5 chambers?
Yes.
Sure, it's 85. Close up of that revolver.
That just shows you the 5 chambers. And this is what it looks like unloaded, by the way. Cartridges have been removed from the weapon.
States 86. Markers placed where we found those cartridge casings.
Yes, that is.
87. This is marker number 3. Is that bent cartridge casing, the crushed one?
Yes, it is.
Skip forward to State's Exhibit number 90. We're looking at the marked patrol car. You're not able to see it, but it's a marker number 6.
Correct.
Underneath the driver's side of that door. What was found on marker number 6?
Okay. Again, this is the vehicle furthest from you now. I'm on the other side facing out. Marker number 6 is placed there. And actually there is a cartridge, another cartridge casing probably about a foot or so further under the car that could not be depicted properly. But the marker was placed out so we knew where it was, made it for ease of photography.
That's the fourth cartridge casing.
That is correct.
Showing you State's Exhibit number 92. What are we looking at? 92.
That is a cell phone that was on one of the vehicles.
Now State's Exhibit number 97.
Okay. Again, this is the hood. I mean, the roof of the car farthest from you, the one facing out, and this is a training gun. It's made specifically to fire blanks or simunitions.
Do you know the make and model of that training gun?
I believe it was a Glock. I don't recall the exact. I can look. It's a Glock 17T 9mm FX training handgun.
Obviously, this is a semi-automatic training handgun versus a revolver.
Yes.
And he testified that he went back on August 10th, that day, he had some sunlight. Let me show you some of those photos. I'm going to show you States 36 first. What were you photographing in State 36?
Okay, this is again the vehicle that was closest on the initial picture. I'm against the wall facing out, and this doesn't depict it very well, but there are several marks on the car of interest to me. On the left edge, as you're looking at it, on the left edge and up close to the windshield.
Show you States 37. Takes another angle of the hood of that car, some of those marks.
That's correct. This is the same hood from a different angle.
That's as good as we get unless we turn them all off.
For a little bit. I'll show you States 38, if you just marked those spots.
Yes, again for easy identification or documentation.
So you're going to publish States Exhibit number 45. What are we looking at in this photo?
Okay, this is again the vehicle, going back to the first picture, the vehicle closest to y'all. This is a hole in the driver's side door. Appears to be a projectile impact point or a bullet hole.
States 46 is just basically
This is just further away, showing you where that one is.
Show you States Exhibit number 47 at this time. What is this a photo of?
This is a photo of the vehicle I was told was Lee Cole's vehicle.
The vehicle has the name on there, sort of on the hood, the driver's side of the hood.
Yes, it does.
Showing States 48 this time. Is that same vehicle?
Same vehicle. You can also see on the right-hand side, you can see some of that red evidence tape.
That was taken in place there by...
That was placed there by Gary Negronelli. Looking in through the driver's side front door into the driver's seat and control area. A little more detail, a little closer up, a little more detail, a little better lighting, the same area. This is, again, still the driver's side, but it's a back door now, looking in towards the area where he kept his canine.
And this is where his canine would have the back seats for the canine?
Yes.
State 55. This is the front passenger side.
Yes, this is a front seat just from the passenger side.
What is that item there sitting upright in the seat?
I can't really tell from here.
Can I hand it to you?
Sure.
Yeah, correct, John?
May?
Are we talking about the yellow can there?
That's in the seat.
I still can't tell. It looks like a vest or a belt or something. I can't tell.
State's exhibit 56. What are we looking at?
Okay, we're looking in the rear cargo compartment of the vehicle. If you look down, you'll see that metal case I was telling you about, secured for handling equipment.
What are those items on the top of that locker box area?
The top locker box is appears to be training equipment for his canine.
And did you open up that locker box?
Yes, we did.
Show you State's exhibit 57. What are we looking at in State's 57?
Okay, here we are looking, the locker box has been pulled open. You'll see a blue box in there. That is a weapons box that when you buy a new weapon, this is the type of box that comes in. On the right-hand side, you'll see a couple ammunition boxes. One is called Blazer, the other one is upside-down case. If you look real close, the second box is upside down, the white one. There's actually the muzzle of a small handgun over underneath that box or in that area.
Is this the locker box from the trunk pulled out towards the...
Yes, it is.
And when you photograph items, do you photograph them before moving anything?
Yes, we do.
So when you pulled this out, this is what it saw.
That is correct.
And the gun box you're talking about, the blue one, is right here in the center of the exhibit?
That is correct.
And this is the Blazer ammunition you referred to?
Yes, it is.
This is another box of ammunition?
Yes.
And I think you mentioned the end of the barrel of another inoperable firearm?
Yes.
Show you State's exhibit 58. What is this?
This is that blue box we're just showing. We opened it up and found it to be empty.
Show you State's 59.
We're just it's the same blue box. We're just documenting the information. It should have the serial number of the weapon that was inside that box.
A little bit of glare there on the label on that box, but are you able to read?
I can see the price, $359. Revolver firearm, Smith & Wesson, 38 special, 2-inch barrel in case. There's a number CFU457, and the other things on the other side are a little glared out.
Approach the witness with that last exhibit now. So State's 59. I know there's, I don't know if the label was washed out or if there was just some glare on the photo, but does it have a name for who that gun was, who it belonged to?
Yes, on the third line, I can make out the last name of Cole.
Show you Exhibit again, this is the laser ammunition found in the corner of that lockbox.
That's correct.
Council approach.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 62, Mr. Dewey. What do you see? What did you photograph in this photo?
This photograph, I just want to focus, but there it is. This one is another box of ammunition. This one is by Winchester, Super X. It says loud noise, 38 special smokeless. In the bottom right-hand corner it says blank. Above that there is a blue box. I don't know how to pronounce that name, but it says 380 blanks.
And again, it has blank on the OG box there, the blue box.
Yes, it does.
Where were these blanks found in relation to the blazers?
They were underneath the blazers.
Remove the blazers from this photo?
Yes.
Show you State 65. What is this photo of?
This is a picture of the ammunition that was contained inside the Winchester 38 smokeless blank.
This is how they were packaged inside that box?
Yes, it was.
Show you State 67. Have you removed one of the Winchester blanks?
That's correct. This is just, again, for better documentation.
Show you States 69. Those are those box of blue blanks that you found in the trunk.
That's correct.
I'll show you State 71. That you holding one of those blanks?
Yes, on the left you can see they were stored, again, how they were stored, and that is one of the cartridges that were taken out.
Show you States 98 this time. What is this photo of?
Okay, this is again for documentation purposes. This is the back end or the striker pin of each cartridge. A blue one, the Winchester, and then the blazers. And this is depicting the ammunition that's inside each box.
Showing you States exhibit number 108, and did you photograph all the different sides of the boxes?
Yes, I did.
And photograph obviously any warning labels that were on those boxes?
I did.
Showing you States 110 at this time. Can you tell us what we're looking at 110?
Again, for documentation, I was showing you how the two boxes of ammunition and how they were packed inside. The Winchesters were on the left, and the CCIs are the ones on the right.
The CCI blazers on the right, do you know why they would be slotted in individual spots like that?
I could not say.
Show you states 111, what are we looking at in states 111?
We are looking at the firing pins on each of the two, or the caps on each of the two. The yellow or brass one is the Winchester, and then the aluminum one on the right is the CCI.
Showing you states 112.
Again, showing comparison for the size of the two cartridges side by side.
The Winchester blank is on the right, and the blazer is on the left.
Yes.
Show you lastly 113.
Okay, this is, again, the three different types of ammunition and showing what the top of each one looks like, or how where the projectile or whatever was inside would come out.
Your Honor, may we approach briefly?
You may.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Mr. Dewey, I'm going to approach you first with states 117, 118, 119, and 120. If you could take a look at those items for me, please. Judge, we're going to move to introduce states. Composite 115 through composite 128 into evidence. Really approach your look at that first report. No objection.
It's a composite, or they're each individual exhibits? 115 through 128, yes. So States Exhibits 115 through 128 will be admitted into evidence per stipulation.
Your Honor, may I have permission to publish Exhibit 115 and 116? I'll ask for bailiff's assistance.
Yes, you may.
I need something to break this. Right now. So much paint on these boxes. Careful, these will fall out. These are the blanks that were in. Yes.
You may.
Bring this down so that it doesn't fall out. Everyone see it okay?
One was in the chamber, the rest were in the magazine.
Bailiff is now publishing 116 for the record.
Yeah.
Can everyone see it? Difference? Your Honor?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions for Mr. Beal.
Cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor.
They're all admitted into evidence. We can go over there. Thank you.
Afternoon, Mr. Judge.
Afternoon.
So let me ask you first of all, when you look at the original photographs of the casings, you found the casings in a certain location.
That's correct.
When your experience of collecting evidence on that, can you explain, or in your training, do you have any explanation as to what happens to the casings when they come out of the gun as far as where you're looking for them?
I don't understand your question.
Well, the casing that you identified, you said were in a certain location, is that correct?
Correct.
Do you as a witness have any knowledge as to how a casing would end up in that position in relation to where the trigger was pulled on a gun?
As compared to on 38 Revolver, they would not fall out. They would stay in the gun.
So the things that you found, where you found them, they were obviously not, they were not 38. They were not 38 rounds, correct?
They were the 38 wad cutters, yes.
Wad cutters?
Yes.
Right, okay. The fact that they were found in location they were, does that, as a crime scene panels there, does that tell you that the gun was fired in that location?
No, it does not.
Okay, and that's what I'm asking us.
Okay.
Tell the jury about that.
In my experience, I cannot say what happened here, but normally when you unload a revolver, you pop the barrel out, hit a little thing on the bottom, and they just fall straight on the ground. And that's all I can say about why they might be in that location.
So you don't know why they're in that location?
No, I do not.
Now, the markings on the vehicle that we discussed, the picture they showed you with the marks that were on the vehicle?
It's 1, 2, 3, or a little
Right.
on the hood of the car?
Right.
Yes.
Those marks, did you take any type of measurements?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you have any ability to determine the distance those marks were as far as from one end of the car to the other? Did y'all ever do anything like that?
No, I did not.
Okay, so you just took a picture of where they were on the car.
Right.
The things that you took pictures on of where they were on the car, were they consistent with something hitting the hood of the car?
In my experience, yes.
Okay. And is that why you documented them?
Yes, that is correct.
Did you find any difference in numbers between the casings and the markings on the cars?
I don't understand the
Well,
question.
how many casings did you find?
4.
4. And how many mark spots did you see? Let's start on the hood first.
3 on the hood,
Okay, and where was the 4th?
in the door.
Okay. So the numbers, the numbers of casings matched with the numbers of marks that you had documented.
Yes, it did.
Now, the state asked you some questions about asking you to identify, you said so?
Yes.
Okay. So this blue box here,
Yes.
okay, you described before that is a box that you get when you purchase a weapon, correct?
Yes, it's similar to one, yes.
Right. And then and that was on State 57. So let's look at State 59. You gave some information as to what was on this box, and you noted the last name Cole. Were you able to also see a date on this box as far as a purchase date?
I can see a date on there. I do not know if it says purchased on that date.
Okay, can I approach?
You may.
Let's just start with, do you see a date on that box?
Yes, I do.
And what is that date?
6/13/2015. And it says in front of a date of, but I do not see any other markings or indicating what that date is.
You testified earlier that this is a weapons box you get when you said, quote, buy new.
That is a gun box, yes. They usually what they come in.
And if you purchase a gun box, the information that you looked at here on States 59 is the kind of thing that they would attach to the box when you buy it.
I cannot testify to what individual dealers would put on the box.
Okay. So when you said before when you buy new, you don't know that exactly what it relates to this box. Is that what you're telling us?
That's correct. It's just generally what new guns come in.
Okay. Well, and the fact that, let me ask you this, the fact that this box, it has at least something that appears to be a price, correct?
Correct.
Now, in states number 62, states number 62, you said you had to remove a box above both the Winchester and the POG,
Yes.
okay? And the box that you removed was a Blazer box, correct?
Correct.
The one I asked you about here. I just have a moment to get out of order. Okay. Would you look at stage 103. This is a picture you took of the side of the blazer box?
That is correct.
Okay. When you're out there looking for evidence in a case, do you have familiarity with ammunition as far as what you're looking for, as far as casings or bullet fragments, things of that nature? Are you trained in that?
Yes,
Okay. Do you see something on there indicating 148GR?
that is correct.
Do you know what that means?
148 grains.
Okay, and what is grain?
Grain is the size of the projectile, how much it weighs.
Stage 105. You also take a photograph on the back of the blazer indicating where it starts to list information about the blazer.
Yes.
Okay. And you referred to it before as CCI. CCI, the maker of what they call the blazer?
I'm not familiar with that rounds. I don't know that, if that is a brand or what.
Okay, so if I refer to it as blazer, we know it's...
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And when you documented that, what was the point of documenting what this box said right here?
I was just showing the 4 sides of the box, or 6 sides of the box, actually.
All right. And did you photograph this to the point where you could get the wording also included on this picture?
Tried to, yes.
Okay. And the wording on it there, is, if I'm correct, is blazer is the perfect target practice and training cartridge for shooters who don't reload their ammo.
Correct.
Did you have any difficulty reading that when you were possessing the box and documenting it?
No,
Did you have to do anything to pull off any tape or anything to see that?
no.
So the condition of the box that you photographed is the condition they were in Officer Cole's car when you opened it up.
Yes.
The Winchester blank box, you found rounds of Winchester blanks still in that box, correct?
That's correct.
Do you know approximately how many? Did you document that?
Yes, I did, if I can get my notes.
Well, it's reflected in the picture, correct?
Yes.
Just one moment, please.
You may. Any redirect? All right, sir, you may step down. Does the clerk have all the exhibits that were admitted into evidence? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been going at this about an hour and 50 minutes, close to 2 hours, so I think this would be a good time to break again, stretch, take a little restroom break. We'll take about 15 minutes to get you back there, and we'll bring you back out.
Just leave your notebooks on the chairs.
Okay, court's in recess till 1:45. Do I need to wait?
All rise, court stands in recess.
Corner up.
Oh, did he? Yeah, I saw that. That's funny. Oh, did he what? Yeah. He didn't pull nothing while he was in here. Because he was harassing him. Well, that's good. I appreciate it.
I'm capable of that.
Earlier, I had half the lights on, half the lights off. They were popping and making noises, and I'm like, come on, just put it right down. Come on, bring it right down. That's why I had to turn it all off. No, the small one. Okay. Yep. Thus far, you only did swimming a little long. I know, I was gonna text her, but that's annoying, but then she must have stopped. Oh, it was, maybe that's why it's so loud. Okay. Yeah, it was loud. And the orders? I have men's. Yeah, I'll probably need to go get some, have to dig in it then. It's not really cold water after that. It's just more for me and her to drink. Huh? Yeah, it is. And I have this one.
It was 17 years ago.
Hey, hey, hey.
All rise. This court is back in session. Honorable Judge Devin George presiding.
Thank you, everybody. You may have a seat. You ready for the jury? Just to stand back up, I guess.
How fast? 15 minutes, right?
Okay. Oh, okay. That's what they do generally. They have a red pen, and then on their label, they just mark admitted.
Yes.
Ready, Your Honor?
Yes, we are.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody. You may be seated. State, please call your next witness.
State calls Shane Jonikowski.
Hello? Stand here. Face the clerk to be sworn.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this class will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
This way, please. Just watch your step. You can have a seat, sir.
Afternoon. Please make sure to speak in a microphone. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon.
Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
I'm Corporal Chatakowski with Punta Gorda PD.
And Corporal Chodakowski, how long have you been with Punta Gorda PD?
About 6.5 years.
What do you do as a corporal?
Currently, it's a road patrol, road patrol supervisor position. I fill in as an acting lieutenant and supervise road patrol duties. Yes, sir.
Back in August, what was your position?
At that time, I was what's considered an MPO, which is a Master Police Officer. It's just a normal road officer, per se.
Part of the agency's bike team.
I was and still am.
And on August 9th of last year, were you assigned to play a role in the Chamber Police Night?
I was. My first duty of the night was to give a bike demo or bike display of our patrol bike unit. After that, I was supposed to play in a second scenario that was supposed to play out.
What time was that event supposed to start that night?
I don't recall the exact time, somewhere around 5:30 to 6 p.m.
Remember what hours you worked that day?
I did not come on shift until then, so I would have been going on 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. night shift.
Do you remember when you arrived at Concord Police Department?
Approximately 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Is there a gym at the Concord Police Department?
There is.
Where is that located?
It's next to our storage building. It's separate from the actual police department building. There's an overhang, and then there's a storage building, and then the gym is connected to that building.
In the back of the park?
Yes.
And can you tell us what you did during the static display, the bike display?
I simply just went over the function of our bike team. I gave a brief demonstration of our patrol bikes, the uses for them, showed the lights, the sirens that we have on them, and then we conducted not myself, but two other officers on the bike team conducted a display of the bike unit. It's a small scenario.
You mentioned that your other role that evening was to play in a second set scenario, is that right?
Yes.
Can you just walk me through what that scenario was?
That scenario was I would have been playing essentially it would have been a bad guy where a citizen would have come in contact, the citizen would have been playing the police officer, and would have come in contact with me and another role player, essentially to try to break us up, whatever the scenario would have been. I believe it was going to be a fight, and they would have been playing the police officer. We would have been playing the bad guy. Yes, sir.
And was that supposed to take place after the first shoot?
Yes, sir.
When you finished your static display, bike unit, with the members of the chamber, what did you do after that?
We moved over to where the first scenario would have been taking place, and we started to set that scenario up. I placed a patrol vehicle next to where the gym was, which was one of the vehicles that was going to be used in the scenario. I believe it was the marked, but I don't recall.
The scenario you were playing, did you have any protective gear on in that scenario? Did you plan to have protective gear on in that scenario?
I would have, yes. It would have been a mask and a very soft vest.
Why would you wear a mask?
Because the rounds that the munitions gun or the blue gun shoots it's like a soap or paint-based pellet, and if it was to hit someone in the face, it would hurt them. So we wear protective masks, similar to a paintball.
Officer Cole, going to wear protective gear for that scenario as well?
He would have.
And obviously, the civilian or the member of the Chamber of Commerce was the officer in that second scenario.
Correct.
Did you have a gun yourself in that second scenario?
I did not.
You seen that first shoot, don't shoot scenario?
Once before. The officer would have once again played the bad guy. The citizen would have come in contact with the officer, who was supposed to look like a suspicious person, who was supposed to look like he was looking at the vehicle. The citizen comes in contact with that person, with the officer. and then at that point the officer would have a reaction, and they would generally grab a blank and it would be up to the citizen to decide their course of action.
Was Officer Cole finding a suspicious person in the crowd or the bad guy, basically? Was he supposed to fire the gun in the direction of the person playing the officer?
He would have, no, not necessarily fired it in the direction. He would have used what would have been safe firearm procedures, but it would have been as if someone had pulled the gun on the citizen, and they would have to react accordingly.
Supposed to point it in her direction?
I would say no.
He was supposed to, was he supposed to fire it to get her attention?
Yes.
And how was he supposed to get her attention?
Well, by firing the gun, it would have shot blanks and made the noise, which would have gotten the attention of the citizen.
If, let's just say I'm the bad guy in this scenario. You are a civilian playing the officer in this scenario. And I have a blank gun, and I'm looking at you, and I fire it this direction. That would get your attention?
As an officer, it definitely would. I can't speak as a civilian.
Is that going to get the civilian to make the decision whether she is to shoot or not shoot back?
Sustained.
What was the point of firing a gun with the civilian in that scenario?
Overruled.
It would have been my guess would be to get a reaction from the citizen.
What was the name of that scenario?
It was a shoot, don't shoot scenario.
So the civilian has the simunitions weapon, these little paint detergent pellets. So they have the option to either shoot, obviously, or not shoot, right?
Yes.
Were you present when Officer Cole shot Mary Knowlton during that scenario?
I was.
Where was the gun Officer Cole was using during that scenario?
It was on the back bumper, or it was next to the gym. I don't recall if it was the back bumper or the front bumper. I don't recall which way the vehicle was facing, but it would have been on the bumper closest to the gym.
Away from Mary Knowlton?
Correct.
And did he pick up that gun?
He did.
Was the woman supposed to know if Officer Cole had a gun?
No.
Was she supposed to know he was going to pick it up and have a gun in his hand?
No, I don't believe so.
Surprise.
Yes, sir.
Where was where was Tom Lewis during this scenario?
I believe he was in the small crowd of citizens that was watching. He was kind of explaining the scenario, I believe.
Was the members of the chamber there that night?
Yes, sir.
When Officer Cole started firing a firearm in the scenario, where was he in relation to Mary Knowlton?
He would have been towards the rear of the vehicle, or the closest to the gym, and she would have been somewhere in the middle or towards the front of the vehicles.
How far away from
The length of a Crown Victoria police car, approximately. I don't know the exact length of that.
remember how many shots were fired?
I do not.
At any point when he was firing that revolver, did you hear the gun click or pop or anything like that?
Yes, I did hear some clicks. Yes.
Do you know why that was happening?
I do not. I assumed something had misfired.
After the shooting, did you see Lieutenant Salzman pick up Officer Cole's gun?
Yes.
What did he do with it?
He unloaded it.
Have you ever seen that gun before that night?
Not that I recall.
Before the scenario, did you hear anyone talking about the gun that Officer Cole was going to use?
I did not.
Did you see any of the ranking officers, either Chief Lewis or the captains or lieutenants, anybody like that? Did you see them or hear them talking about the gun Cole was going to use?
I personally did not.
Do you know who loaded Lee Cole's gun that day?
I do not.
Before the scenario began, did you check Officer Cole's gun yourself?
I did not.
Why did you not do that?
I just assumed that someone else had.
Were you assigned, designated, or told in any way that you needed to check Officer Cole's firearm?
I was not.
Did you, when you said you assumed, did you see anyone do that before the scenario?
I did not.
Do you know whose gun that was?
At that time, I did not.
Now, but you did have to.
Yes.
What kind of firearm are you issued as a Punta Gorda Police Department officer?
I am issued a Glock 35, Model 35.
It's a semi-automatic weapon.
Yes.
Are Punta Gorda Police Department officers issued revolvers?
No.
Do you know why Lee Cole had a revolver?
I know that he used revolvers for K-9 training.
Do you know how an officer would get a revolver when they're only issued semi-automatics?
If he was carrying his own, that would be my only guess.
If Lee Cole were to be using a revolver in a shooting scenario, like the Chamber of Police night, would someone have to approve that for him to use it?
Now knowing what that revolver was, yes, that specific revolver, yes.
Were you interviewed that night, which was into the morning hours of August 10th after the shooting?
I was.
FD Elite?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness with an exhibit?
You may.
Officer Precautions, have you had an opportunity to see video of the shoot-don't-shoot scenario we discussed?
Yes, I have.
I have no objection with the party proceeding.
What number exhibit is it again?
This is 129, Your Honor.
129, it's a video of the scenario.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, it will be admitted into evidence per stipulation.
May I have permission to publish?
You may. When you have it set up, just let us know so we can turn the lights down. Okay, go ahead with the lights, thank you.
Officer Precautions, I just want to pause this and ask you a couple questions. This vehicle we see here, is this Officer Cole's vehicle?
Yes, it is.
And there looks like there's some, this is obviously the back parking lot of the Punta Gorda Police Department.
Yes, yes, it is.
And what is this building here that we're looking at?
That's the gym and storage area.
The area over to the right of the gym and storage area, it looks like there's a vehicle of some kind. What is this area?
That's just extra storage for our, we have an off-road vehicle and a couple other specialty vehicles that we keep there.
And can you see where you are in this camera?
Yes.
Where are you?
To the far left, second from the farthest, I guess. Yes, right there.
Is this you in the black shorts?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you know what's in your right hand there?
I believe that's the mask I would have been wearing for the next scenario.
Okay, that protective mask.
Yes, sir.
Do you know who these officers are next to you, right and left side of you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, on the
It's Officer Kelvin Jimenez, and to the right, I believe, is Officer Juan Gonzalez.
And then just to the right of Officer Gonzalez and his palm tree, who is this person here? It looks like with long sleeves on.
That is Captain Woodard.
And the person next to him would have been Mary Knowlton.
Yes.
And a woman to the right of Mary Knowlton, do you know who that is?
I believe that is Gloria Sapanic.
I'm going to ask you about this officer here. Do you recognize who he is? Right in the middle, kind of behind the chamber group. Do you recognize who he is?
Yes.
Who is that?
That's Captain Jason Gischini.
Okay. And where was Tom Lewis when this was about to begin?
I don't think I exactly see him here, but if you see the teal shirt to the far right, I believe he was in front of them.
In front of these folks here?
I believe so.
Okay. And the last question is, who is this female officer? It looks like facing Captain Justine.
That was Rebecca Grimm.
Officer Trzaskowski, when the civilian playing the officer walks up to Officer Cole, do you know what's going on during this hearing?
Just from what I see, I have a general idea of what's going on.
Are they talking at all?
I don't recall. I believe they were, though.
And at this point in the scenario, do you know where the gun is that Officer Cole was using?
It would have been on the front bumper of the unmarked car on the left.
Had you seen him with the gun before the scenario was set up?
I believe him I saw where he placed it.
You saw him replace it?
I saw him where he placed the gun.
And where did he place it?
It was in the front bumper.
On the front bumper of this car?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions for you.
Cross-examination? That's fine. You may.
Sure.
So, when this is run a little bit more, would you agree with me that Chief Lewis, this is Chief Lewis right here, you can see that?
Yes, yes.
Does that make it clearer for you, that Chief Lewis with the badge and the armor?
Yes, sir.
Stop. You're over there and watching as this is going down?
Yes, sir.
I don't recall these names. There, I see it. I got it. Thank you. Yeah. So, you're out there originally as part of the static display with the bikes, correct?
Yes, sir.
The whole time that you're doing your part of it, Chief Lewis is with this group going around, giving tours, taking them to the static display. He's over there now, basically in a position with all of them as they're viewing this, correct?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned before about putting the things to put the scenario together for this, right?
Yes, sir.
This is not something where you would expect the Chief Lewis to be out there putting the scenario together because you know he's doing tours and speeches and things like that, correct?
That's correct.
And in the past, when you've done these things, the officers that are involved in the shoot, don't shoot are out there doing the things they need to do to put that scenario together, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you were out there, you saw Officer Cole with a gun that you knew was supposed to have blanks. You saw that at some point, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was when the two of you were out there kind of in setup, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he was having contact with you out there, right?
Yes.
You saw him also having contact with Lieutenant Salzman out there?
Yes.
And you saw him having contact out there with Captain Woodard?
I don't recall specifically Captain Woodard.
Okay. Do you remember Captain Woodard bringing you guys the helmets or something to put on?
Yes. Yeah.
So Captain Woodard, would you agree with me, was taking the position of making sure that you were safely outfitted with what you needed for the scenarios you're going to play?
Yes, sir.
You agree with me that when you saw this out there that day, as you see it here, you see Lee Cole firing with both arms up by that gun, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you see him actually doing a back step as he's doing it, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's consistent with what you saw that day.
Yes, sir.
You agree with me for the effect of a blank to get somebody's attention, this is not necessary, is it?
Yes, sir.
In fact, the safe thing is to, and any gun, is to not point and aim it at somebody, correct?
Correct.
And you are trained yearly to certify your weapons, correct?
Yes, sir.
One of the basic tenets of gunfire and firearm safety is you don't aim a gun at somebody, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you treat every gun as if it's loaded, right?
Yes, sir.
The effect of a blank and a shoot, don't shoot, as you said earlier, you'd agree with me, is to get the attention to say, hey, this would have been the moment in the scenario when the suspect fired a weapon, right?
That's correct.
And the test is to see, did they shoot before it fired or after or did nothing, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so the effect of the blank is basically, it's a noisemaker for the event, right?
Yes.
Now, you don't have to make the noise, aim it at somebody, do you?
No, sir.
You recall that Captain Woodard took the two civilians that were going to play in the scenarios over to a corner away from everybody else.
Yes, sir.
And so they were receiving basically special instructions different than the rest of the crowd because they're playing in it, right?
Yes, sir.
And when this scenario starts, in fact, may I approach this again?
You may.
When this scenario starts, in fact, is this Captain Woodard?
Yes, sir.
And this is Ms. Knowlton here, correct?
Yes.
All right. And this is before anything went down. They're still talking over here, and you're right over here. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So, when the scenario starts, would you agree with me that Captain Woodard was basically instructing Ms. Knowlton as to the beginning of the scenario?
Yes, sir.
And the way this normally works is let's say it goes through and Officer Cole had shot the gun in a safe direction for the noise, and whether she shot the simunition or not, at some point you would agree with me that the person who's controlling the scenario says, end scenario, or stop scenario, comes in and stops the parties.
Yes, sir.
And that person in this case, who let Ms. Knowlton in, would have been Captain Woodard, correct?
It would seem so, yes, sir.
Now, you're also on the SWAT team of the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Lee Cole's actually trained with you a few weeks before this scenario, correct?
Not specifically with the SWAT team, but it was at a demo, per se, for the sheriff's office.
Okay. So at the demo for the Sheriff's Office, this is something when you're there, are you there as in the capacity of SWAT?
Yes.
He's there in the capacity of a role player with a canine?
Yes, sir.
All right. And in that scenario on that day, did you happen to see the revolver that, or did you see him with his weapon that he used in that scenario?
I did see him with a revolver. I do not know what revolver it was.
What color was it?
I don't recall. I saw him from a long distance.
Okay. So, the shoot, don't shoot scenario done by the Punta Gorda Police Department at a time before Chief Lewis was ever the chief, right?
Yes, I believe so.
As far as checking and safety equipment things, you do not know what Captain Woodard did with Lee Cole, or what opportunities or discussions he had about that, do you?
I do not.
You just know that you do know that he brought you protective gear.
Yes.
And when they asked about the fact that you checked Lee Cole and you said, you assumed somebody else did, you would agree with me that, is it common knowledge among the, well, let me rephrase that. Is it known when you go into these scenarios here that safety for the people that are participating in this is paramount?
Yes.
And the idea of doing safety checks is not something that somebody has to explain to you. You know to do that. You know to check your own weapon, to make sure you have your proper things, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, if Lee Cole had said to you that day, if he said to you, Shane, I didn't get my secondary checks on the gun, okay? Are you capable of doing that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you agree with me that the issue about safety of any weapon, either that you're using or he's using, starts with the person who has the weapon? It's their responsibility to make sure everything is safe, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you know anything about what a wad cutter was?
I know what wad cutters are. I don't believe I've ever shot one.
Did you know what they were back then?
I just knew that they were something you shoot at a paper target. That's my extent of my knowledge for wad cutters.
Did you ever see them compared to a blank that goes through a 38?
I did not.
Now, at one point, you would agree with me that, that your training lieutenant was on the scene, that's Lieutenant Sullivan, right?
Yes, sir.
Lieutenant Sullivan is in charge of training. That's something that where he basically can check things out of the armory, he can do safety checks of guns, things like that, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you also know that as a training lieutenant, they're generally in charge or oversee the demonstrations.
From my understanding, yes.
So, what I wanted to ask you about was, you were interviewed by FDLE on August 10th, 2016, around 12:41 a.m., correct?
Yes.
So you've been there kind of, I guess, the whole day since this, all the way until early the next day.
Yes.
Did you ever leave the scene at all?
I eventually, once everything settled down there and they had that secure, I went back out to work the road, but I never left work.
And that's my question, you know, the question was specific. Did you ever leave the scene from the shooting until the point you were interviewed by FDLE?
I did leave to work back on the road, yes.
Did they call you back?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, do you recall an incident in hearing Lee Cole having some discussion with Lieutenant Salzman before this started?
Yes, vaguely.
Okay. And do you recall that this is why you were walking by them and the two of them were together, is that right?
Yes.
Do you recall hearing Lee Cole say something about that something about the ammunition about being loud or unusual?
Yes.
Now, did you know the details of what he was telling Lieutenant Sullivan in that moment about the ammunition being loud or unusual?
I did not.
Did you stop to participate in that conversation at all?
I did not.
Did Lee Cole ever tell you at any point?
Sustained.
Did you have any type of knowledge from anything out there as to what kind of ammunition Lee Cole was referencing to in that discussion with Lieutenant Sullivan?
Sustained.
Did you ever have an opportunity to see Lee Cole loading ammunition?
I did not.
Did you have any opportunity to go, did you ever go to the back of his vehicle with you? By the way, is that vehicle down there that says K9 unit, is that his vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. Did he ever ask you to go back there with him to review anything as far as ammunition, boxes, anything like that?
He did not.
Did you see him do that with any lieutenant that's in charge of training, whether it was Woodard or Sullivan?
I did not see anybody.
Now, the click that you said, you thought you heard a click at some point?
Yes.
Was that, do you know where that was in the number? First of all, do you know how many shots were fired?
I don't know the exact number.
Do you know where that was in the process of shooting? In other words, did you hear a click first and then shots? Did you hear some shots, a click, and more shots? Did you hear a bunch of shots and then a click?
I believe, from what I recall, it seemed to be multiple shots, then a click, maybe one more shot, then more clicks.
Do you think it might have been in between?
It appeared it was a malfunction to me.
And one more.
Me?
One follow-up question then. Let me ask you, when you say you heard the click, was that, do you know that can be something that happens only with a misfire, or can it happen also with a cylinder?
It could happen with empty cylinder and a revolver, yes.
Any redirect?
Officer Chakowski, the lead testified on cross that civilian safety is important in a scenario like this, right?
Yes, sir.
When Mary Dalton walked into that scenario between those two patrol cars, did she have a helmet on?
She did not.
Officer Cole had a helmet on?
Yes, he did.
Did she have a vest on?
No.
Officer Cole's wearing long sleeves and long pants, right?
Correct.
Did she have any sort of protective gear at all when she was walked out of the
She did not.
Okay, this witness step down. Recross, briefly.
Ms. Knowlton wasn't anticipated or expected to this scenario for the projectile coming at her, correct?
That's correct.
All right, sir, you may step down. State, call your next witness.
Capacity are you employed there?
I am the captain of Support Services Division.
Are you also entertaining another role right now?
Currently, I am the interim chief of police.
What services oversee?
Most of my responsibilities involve the civilian or volunteer components, everything from communications, records, volunteer program. I have a lot of ancillary responsibilities from budget, fleet management, and so forth.
So I guess would the counter to you be the operations side of it?
Correct.
Okay, and operations oversees actual officers?
That's where all of our certified members are, is operations, functions, criminal investigations, things of that nature.
What's your educational background?
I have attended college at Florida Southwestern. I have 2 associate's degrees, one in general education, one in criminal justice. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Florida Gulf Coast University. I have a master's degree in public administration and management from Florida Gulf Coast University, and I also have a graduate level certificate program I've completed at St. Leo University.
What positions have you held in the past 20 years with GPD?
Started out as a patrol officer. I went from there to the rank of sergeant, where I got, after I got promoted, did the roles of training and recruiting, hiring, accreditation. From there, I went over to criminal investigations, where I spent about 4.5 years. Worked a small caseload and also supervised detectives. From there, I went back to patrol, where I was the patrol commander for about 1.5 years or so, until I was transferred over to my role of support services.
Are you familiar with the organizational hierarchy of PGPD?
I am.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
And I've already showed defense counsel states exhibit 1.
Flow chart will be admitted into evidence per stipulation.
Can you see that video?
Yes.
So, at the top, what are we looking at?
At the very top is the chief of police position.
And I'm assuming that the chief of police basically is over everybody, correct?
Chief of police is responsible for the entire department, but he does have certain direct reports.
Okay. So then, this next line here, where you have support services commander, community services supervisor, employee development coordinator, and operations commander. Are all 4 of those roles, I guess, equal as far as command goes, and who's in charge of who?
No, the 2 on the end, one on the left, one on the right, are division commanders. Those are both captains. The one that the community services supervisor, that according to that chart was reporting directly to the chief's position, is a lieutenant's position, and the employee development coordinator to the right of that actually reported directly to the operations commander.
So using services and Jeff Wood as being the operations commander would have come directly, I guess, below the chief?
Correct.
The lieutenant would technically be under you, to go to you?
The employee development coordinator reported directly to Captain Woodard, but the community services supervisor, Lieutenant Heck, did report directly to the chief.
Okay, so Lieutenant Heck was the community services supervisor, and this is accurate to August 2016?
Correct.
Okay, and who was in charge of K9 at that time?
I believe at that time it had recently been transferred over to the operations commander.
Okay, so where the K9 officer, Nicole, who come under operations, how long had it been there for?
Maybe a month.
Okay, and where was it before it was with operations?
It had been reporting to community services.
Okay, so with Lieutenant Katie Heck?
Correct.
Why was Officer Cole reporting to Lieutenant Heck?
The organizational structure at that time had been reshuffled. A lot of what community services does is presentations forth, and that's a lot of the role of the K9 officers to do presentations. So at the time, the chief believed it'd be a good fit right there.
Did Katie Heck also have K9 experience?
Yes.
How long have you known Tom Lewis for?
About 18 years.
Do you consider him a friend?
Yeah, absolutely.
In August of 2016, he was your boss, correct?
Correct.
Did you know Mary Knowlton?
Briefly, yes, a little bit.
How did you know her?
I had encountered her at an event that I had sat down at a table with some other folks, and she was at the table for lunch, and we just chatted for a few minutes.
So it was through your role with PGPD and hers with the Chamber of Commerce?
Correct.
And how long have you known Lee Cole for?
Just for the time that he was employed at the police department.
And what was his official position there?
He was a police officer assigned as the K9 officer.
Is he a friend of yours?
No.
Are you familiar with the Citizens Academies that the department will put on for the community?
Yes.
What are they?
The Citizens Academies basically provide an opportunity for the community to get a better understanding of how a department operates. A lot of the different police departments do them, cities do them. It's a way for the community to interact, kind of learn the inner workings of an organization.
When did they start?
They had started several years prior to my recollection.
Do you know about how many years?
Probably maybe 3 or so. I'm not exactly sure.
How long had Tom Lewis been chief for?
I believe it was the November of 15, I believe.
Is that when he was the interim chief?
I believe that was when he was interim chief.
Okay, and so that would have been from November 15 to when he officially become the chief of police?
I don't recall exactly, maybe 4 to 6 months later.
Do you know where the concept of these citizen academies came from?
I know that within our department, is that the question, within our department?
Yes.
I know that the Citizens Academy themselves, like I said, was a common thing to have. The city itself had been running Citizens Academies, and I think that's where it started out, was more of a city Citizens Academy, and then kind of blossomed into some other more directly focused on police department Citizen Academies.
Who within your department did they come from?
Originally, at the time these started, we had a former chief, Albert Arnell, who initiated the actual Citizens Academies at our department.
Okay, and along with Chief Arnell, who else helped develop them?
Most of our Citizens Academies were run through our community services programs, but the actual additional portions of it, the shoot, don't shoot scenarios, I believe, were developed. I don't know if who they were directed by, but Tom Lewis had initiated them.
Thank you. So, the division that, actually, before becoming chief, where was Tom Lewis?
He was the operations commander.
So these shoot, don't shoot scenarios came from the operations side?
Correct. That they were developed there. I don't know if they were directed by the former chief or how that kind of came about, but that's where they were developed.
But you know that Tom Lewis had a role in that?
Correct.
Prior to August of 2016, about how many academies have you participated in?
I think the department had run probably 4 to 6, maybe half a dozen of them. I don't know if I was at every single one of them, but the department did about a half a dozen of them.
What role did you play?
Primarily my role had always been the tour guide. I was one of the folks who typically at the beginning of these sessions, we'd provide tours of the department, and generally that was what I was doing.
Did you ever participate in the shoot, don't shoot scenario?
No.
In your experience, who facilitated the shoot, don't shoot scenarios?
All right, as to the form of the question, sustained.
In the prior academies, before August 2016, who facilitated the shoot, don't shoot scenarios?
Those had always been by Tom Lewis and Jeff Woodard.
So were you present on August 9th of 2016?
Yes.
Okay, and who specifically was this academy arranged for?
The Punta Gorda Chamber of Commerce.
Had you been there all day?
No, I actually just got back off vacation. I came in that day, but I was actually off-site pretty much all day at a training class at Florida Southwestern.
What time did the academy start?
I believe 5 o'clock.
So Lieutenant Katie Head has the community services supervisor. What was her role in the planning of the academy that night?
She should have coordinated the events of who was going to come in and participate, coordinate with the chamber, make sure everybody understood what time they were supposed to be there, and so forth.
Okay. Was there an agenda associated with that Citizens Academy?
Yes.
Was Katie Heck there that night?
No.
Do you know why?
No.
She just wasn't scheduled to be there?
I don't know why she wasn't there.
I've already showed you guys stage 114.
114, and that's the agenda.
Yes, Your Honor.
State's Exhibit 114 will be admitted into evidence per stipulation.
Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay. So the date, this is for August 19th of 2016. By Roman numeral 1, what is that?
For this August 9th agenda, number 1 says the Chief's welcome.
Okay. And it gives the amount of time allotted to it,
Correct.
right? And whose name comes after that?
Tom Lewis.
Okay. And what does his name designate on the agenda?
That he'd have the overall responsibility for that area.
From there, for number 2 is the police department tour. Again, I guess there's a 15-minute time allotted, and whose name appears next to those?
Tom Lewis, Chris Salzman, and myself.
Okay. And is that when the group was broken up into 3 smaller groups?
Correct.
Okay. And you each take one?
Correct.
Moving on to number 3. What was number 3?
Number 3 is a static display.
And what are the static displays?
The Marine unit, a road patrol representative, and our bike unit.
And it's allotted, I believe, about 15 minutes total.
Yes.
Okay. Would each group go to each station?
They would either go to each station or they were just kind of mingling with them. I don't recall exactly how they did it.
In section 4?
As it says, shoot, don't shoot scenarios.
Whose names are designated there?
Tom Lewis, Chris Salzman, Shane Chodakowski, and Lee Cole.
So, and then I guess if we flip to page 2, page 2 is the remainder.
Correct.
Okay, and what is 5?
Classroom teachings,
And whose names next to those?
Tom Lewis and Chris Salzman.
Okay, and then 6 is the Q&A.
Correct.
Right, and would that involve everyone who had participated?
Yes.
And who created this agenda?
Katie Heck.
Right. Is this something that had already been used before and she just changed names and dates, or is this something she thought of on her own?
This template is something that was used before.
So before she took over that role?
Correct.
So who was in charge of the Citizens Academy on August 9th?
Katie Heck coordinated the Citizens Academy.
And was anybody else in charge?
The police chief, Tom Lewis, facilitated the evening, yes.
And what do you mean by facilitate?
He kind of directed everybody where they were going to go, what was going to happen that evening, who was going to do what.
So out of the 2 of them, Tom Lewis was there, but Katie Heck was not?
Correct.
Did you have any other assignment besides giving a tour?
That evening, no.
Were you aware of how the other officers got their roles for that night?
No.
Where did the shoot, don't shoot scenario take place?
In the back parking lot of the police department.
Were you out there from the very beginning of it?
Yes.
And besides yourself, what other command officers were there? Out back.
Right. There was Tom Lewis, Jeff Woodard, who was the captain of operations, myself, Chris Salzman, who is a member of leadership, lieutenant. He was out there. I don't recall anybody. I don't recall if anybody else was.
And what was Woodard doing at the time?
During the scenarios, during the
And what was Tom Lewis doing at that time?
Explaining to the crowd what was going to happen, how the scenarios were going to kind of evolve.
Right, and he was explaining that to who?
The rest of the chamber members.
So do you know where Mary Knowlton was while he was addressing the rest of the chamber members?
She was inside our training room with Jeff Woodard.
At any point, did you see Tom Lewis speak with Mary Knowlton when she came outside?
Yes, at one point, they said they were ready to go with the scenarios. Jeff Woodard brought Mary Knowlton outside, and there was a brief discussion with her and Tom Lewis.
Who said they were ready to go with the scenarios?
I don't recall.
Was Mary Knowlton ever told that Lee Cole was going to have a firearm?
I don't know.
And do you remember what Lee Cole was wearing?
He was wearing some type of hooded sweatshirt. I don't recall what kind of pants, some type of long pants with a hooded sweatshirt.
Was he wearing any kind of protective mask or that you can remember?
I believe he was, yes.
What about Mary Knowlton? Was she wearing any kind of protective gear?
I don't believe so.
Now, as the actual scenario was playing out, was your attention on what was going on?
No, not so much. As I indicated earlier, I only had one specific role, which is the beginning of the evening. I was kind of meandering about. I really was debating whether to stay there at that portion. But I did get engaged in conversation with one of our officers, so I was kind of talking about one of our, I think it was a fleet issue, about a police car problem. And so I was there, but I wasn't really paying that much attention to what was going on.
So your focus wasn't on the actual scenario?
Correct.
Okay, what drew your attention to the scenario?
I had heard several gunshots.
Was any type of, I guess, procedure or protocol or policy in place, or anything ever written out about who was going to be responsible for these type of events?
No.
Okay. Anything about who would be responsible as a safety officer whenever a training or demonstration or anything is done with weapons being used?
We have some guidelines and so forth related to our training protocols, yes. I don't know if you're talking about like a Citizens Academy. The answer is no.
Okay, so there's something for trainings, but there's nothing for these citizen type of interactions?
Correct.
Do you have any personal knowledge of how Lee Cole ended up with wad cutters?
No.
Now, we know that the standard issue firearm for PGPD is not a revolver, right?
Correct.
And what is the standard issue?
We carry the Glock 23 or the Glock 35. They're both 40 caliber Glocks.
And are revolvers ever issued at PGPD?
No, not for duty weapons, no.
Would there be any reason that Officer Lee Cole would have a revolver?
Not that I know of, other than maybe if there was a training function, but it's not a standard issued weapon.
Okay. Did he do any kind of special training that nobody else at PGPD did that he would need a revolver for?
As a canine officer, my understanding would be that he would use a revolver for some of his canine training or aspects that he does.
Did PGPD keep revolvers in the armory?
At one point in time, we had a training weapon, yes.
Do you know when that point in time was?
We'd had it for years.
Do you know if it was a fully functioning revolver or?
It was one that I had seen used in training exercises for the department. I had seen it modified during those training exercises, so I don't know whether or not it was a fully functional weapon.
When was the last time you probably saw it?
It had been a long time.
Now, does the Punta Gorda Police Department keep any kind of inventory records for the armory?
Yes.
And how often? How often is the actual armory inventoried?
Should be inventoried once a year, but we have records that you could check basically any time to see who was assigned what.
Okay. So once they're checked, I guess once a year, is there a report made or a memorandum made or anything like that?
Yes.
And why is that?
Just gives an overall accounting of what's happening in the armory, how much ammunition we have, how many firearms we currently have available, to make sure that we're keeping up on the bigger picture.
And would those records, I guess, reflect any training weapons that also were in your home?
They should, yes.
Did you receive a subpoena from the state attorney's office for inventory records from 2015 to 2017?
You may.
So, I'm sorry, you received a subpoena for inventory records of the armory for 2015, 16, and 17?
Correct.
What were you able to provide to us? What year?
Some documents from 15 and 17.
Were you able to provide the inventory record for 2016?
No.
Why is that?
I had learned that it had not been formalized.
Who was responsible for formalizing it?
That would have been Chris Salzman from our employee development.
Were you a firearms instructor?
No.
Are you familiar with what a wad cutter is?
I've heard the term, but I am not familiar with it, no.
Had you heard the term prior to August of 2016 or just since then?
Yes.
Are they something that you commonly come across in law enforcement?
It's not something that I don't know I've ever come across.
On August 9th, who was present that was a firearms instructor?
I know Tom Lewis is a firearms instructor. I don't know if anybody else there was present that is.
What's a safety officer?
Safety officer is someone who's typically designated to ensure that everything is going as designed, to make sure that there's everybody's safe, that things are set up properly, that people are carrying through properly, that everybody has everything in order.
And would a safety officer be designated for any kind of event or demonstration that had weapons involved?
Overruled.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, for any kind of event or demonstration, would there be a safety officer designated if there were weapons involved?
There should be a safety officer if there's weapons involved, correct?
So when, I think we've already heard that law enforcement has to qualify once a year, correct, for firearms?
Yes.
And where does PGPD qualify at?
Historically, we would qualify at the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office gun range. More recently, we've been shooting at a private range here in Port Charlotte.
So when you do your annual qualifying, is there a safety officer there?
It's overseen by a firearms instructor.
And what kind of checks do you go through?
Firearm instructors during our training are always, there's a time to load ammunition, there's a time to approach the range lines, there's a time to approach the targets. Everything's kind of very regimented.
As of today, are you aware of who was designated as the safety officer on August 9th?
No.
Did you ever know if a safety officer was designated for August 9th?
At the time, I did not know.
You know something different today?
Correct, that there was not one specifically assigned to that role.
Now, does the Punta Gorda Police Department have surveillance cameras that cover the area where the shoot-don't-shoot scenario happened?
Yes.
And I believe defense is stipulated to states 130.
No objection.
Is this, I had 129 as the video of the scenario.
That's a short clip, I believe.
Oh, now this is, okay, I gotcha. States Exhibit 130 will be admitted into evidence per stipulation.
And have you previously seen this video? The long video?
Yes.
Okay. Approximately how long is it?
The long video was about 2 hours, I believe.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Want to approach?
If I'm blocking your view, let me know. Here, am I blocking your view?
I have one here. As long as I can see what you're pointing at, we're fine. Thank you.
What are we looking at?
This is a still picture right now of our back parking lot.
Okay, and did you yourself hold this video?
Yes.
For, what date and time for?
August 9th, 2016. It was in the evening around 5 to 7 p.m. probably, but I was asked to do a variety of smaller, different versions.
Do you recognize this car that's pulling in?
Yes.
Whose car is that?
At that time, that was assigned to Officer Lee Cole.
exiting the car is who?
That's Lee Cole.
The ending of this, what does it end with? Does it end with the shoot, don't shoot scenario?
Correct.
So from now until the end of it, do you see multiple people come in and out and it's the officer pulled multiple times?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to forward it.
You just make sure to mention for the record where you replay. Thank you.
Okay, who do we see now?
The first person is Lee Cole. Behind him to the right is Lieutenant Chris Salzman. To the left on the bike is Shane Chodakowski.
Okay, and this is at 5:19:15.
I think it's at 6:19.
I'm sorry, is it 6:19?
It's at 33:40 into the tape.
Okay. You have any idea what they're looking at there?
That looks like a tint meter.
And is there any audio with this?
No.
Just looking ahead again. And then starting at 1 hour, 14 minutes and 16 seconds. Who just entered the frame?
Lee Cole.
And who you just passed?
Kelvin Jimenez.
so we still see Officer Cole, and he's in the trunk of his car?
Correct.
Who is this officer in the far left car?
That's Officer Shane Chadakowski.
What is it that Officer Cole just grabbed out of his trunk?
Looks like a sweatshirt.
And is it consistent with the sweatshirt he was wearing during the shoot scenario?
Yes.
What's in this building that Nicole was almost walking into?
That building is used for a multitude of different things. To the left is part of our generator. As you move right, where you see the door, the front side of that building is a gym. And actually on the back side of that building is the other portion of the generator. The big garage door, we have long-term evidence storage as well as department property in there.
And then 1 hour, 20 minutes and 6 seconds in. I'm going to stop for a minute. As the video goes on, we can turn the lights back on. Do we eventually see the participants as well as Chief Willis and Woodard and everyone come outside for the shoot, don't shoot scenario?
Correct. They move from what would be left of the actual view area. The stack display was to the left on the other side of our building. All the participants came from that side over into the area basically where the box is.
Okay. And at any time, do you see Woodard speaking with Cole? If you remember.
During the video portions that I had reviewed, yes.
Okay, so there is time where Woodard is speaking with Cole. Do you have any idea what they're speaking about?
No.
Does Cole actually, throughout this entire video, make contact with numerous other law enforcement officers?
Yes.
At any point in the video, do you see Lee Cole with the revolver in his hand?
Yes.
Well, until we can get that straightened out, we'll switch gears a little bit. Back in August of 2016, was there a policy in place, I guess, that, actually, I'll skip that. I think we already covered that. Who is in charge of approving policies?
Chief of Police.
Were there policies in place in August of 2016 dealing with the use of firearms?
Yes.
And does it specify what firearms PGPD officers can carry?
Yes.
And were there exceptions when, I guess, due to special circumstances, like going undercover or special assignments, that a different handgun could be used?
Yes.
Okay, and would you have to get the chief's approval?
Yes.
And would this be considered a special assignment? Something like a Citizens Academy?
No.
No? Okay, what would a special assignment be?
Special assignment may be being assigned to a narcotics task force, something that's very unusual for our day-to-day operations.
Okay. Would you consider Lee Cole being on duty during this time?
Yes.
Okay. And were there policies in place relating to carrying a secondary firearm?
Yes.
And what's an authorization to carry a secondary off-duty weapon?
There's two things that have to happen. One, you have to get approval first to make sure it meets our criteria, and then two, you have to qualify.
And do you know if Lee Cole had a authorization form for the revolver?
I do not.
One moment. No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination? You may.
back in session.
Thank you. You may be seated. We're still in recess. When Ms. Russell comes back in, we'll see if the jury is ready to come.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, you're probably right. They're perfect. You're probably
Oh, I'm not.
I'm in the corner, nobody can see me. And how do you want to do it in the morning too? Have like 3 more minutes. Oh, well, fine. Now that I look at the clock. Did you want to meet by then too? And then the other one? No.
Since Russell comes in, I think we're that house.
Mrs. Russell, step back into the restroom.
All right, so you can have a seat back on the witness stand when the jury comes out. You're in the same place. Are we ready for the jury? All right.
Your Honor, you ready?
We're ready. You may be seated. Counsel, you may inquire.
Afternoon, sir. You took over as the interim chief for what date?
I believe it was February 22nd of this year.
And you took that position over because while this matter was pending, the chief was placed on administrative leave, correct?
Correct.
Now, you were second in command on August 9th, 2016?
I was one of 2 captains who held that level, yes.
Okay. And actually, you are the longest standing command officer in the agency, aren't you?
Correct.
You were there before Tom Lewis was there, correct?
Correct. I started before he did.
And when Tom Lewis was named interim chief in 2015, your position was captain, correct?
Correct.
When he was named chief in March of 2016, you were still in the same position you are as far as what you were in August, correct?
Correct.
Now, you testified before that the shoot don't shoot was brought under the administration of the prior chief, Chief Arnell, correct?
Correct.
And actually, when it was brought in, Did you have any knowledge or aware of who was the lieutenant in charge of community services at that time?
Previously, yes.
Who was
That
that?
was Lieutenant Joe King.
Okay. And Lieutenant Joe King at that time then, as charge of community services, was tasked with implementing anything that Chief Arnell wanted as far as community events, correct?
Correct.
You missed that, Judge.
I was just going to advise you that it's rolling, so if you want to stop it.
And you were Joe King's direct supervisor, correct?
Correct.
How many years have you supervised the community services section?
Probably a half a dozen, maybe 8 years, different times.
So in all that time that you supervised it, then when demonstrations were put on, you were over the person that was tasked with doing it, correct?
Correct.
Your job, in the position you have, required you to attend policy meetings, didn't it?
Correct.
And one of the things that Chief Lewis had to use within any issues of policy meetings was your knowledge and experience to assist in any type of policy development, correct?
Correct.
You also have experience assessing other agencies to get them accredited as law enforcement agencies, correct?
Correct.
And you know that Chief Lewis has the same type of experience in helping other agencies get accredited, correct?
Correct.
And part of the accreditation process is that you will go into an agency that's not your own, right? And you will scour everything from how it's set up, what their command structure is, their policies, everything, and take a look at it, correct?
Correct.
And one of the things you're doing when you do that is you're looking for issues there which may stop them from being accredited or say, hey, this is a problem within your agency, correct?
Correct.
So within the Punta Gorda Police Department, is anybody...
Ron, can we approach, please?
Yes, you may.
Within your agency, so I was asking you, who else does accreditation stuff? Just you and Chief Lewis? Anybody else doing that?
There are several people who are qualified to be accreditation assessors.
And all of these people then are available when you have these type of policy meetings to give input. For example, you're permitted to give input and use all your knowledge and expertise to assist if there's anything to deal with policy development, correct?
Correct.
Are you aware if your agency is an accredited agency?
We are.
Okay. Which does that, and are you aware then, since you do accreditations, can you tell the jury, well, let me ask you, does that involve other people coming in and doing the same thing to your agency that you do to different agencies?
It does.
Okay. And is one of the things that is done, as you testified before, that you do to other agencies, is when the accreditation agency comes into your department, they look at your policies.
Correct.
You've actually served as a team leader in accreditation assessments, correct?
That's correct.
Tell the jury what a team leader is for accreditation assessments.
Team leader is the person who, when you go out to the other agencies, you help facilitate the process.
Kind of in charge of what the whole review is type of thing?
Correct.
So in the, I think, 12 years, you said you were over community services and things of that nature. But any time during that, if you saw an issue or a policy that's needed, since you review policies, fully capable of providing that knowledge and helping to assist to develop something like that, right?
Correct.
And if the accreditation agency that went in and looked at the Punta Gorda Police Department saw something lacking in a policy, that's something that an accreditor can make known to the agency, correct?
Yes.
When you mentioned earlier today that there were no, referred to, and I'll make sure I heard your testimony right, that there was no policy about the shoot, don't shoot, would you agree with me that there are policies within the Punta Gorda Police Department agency that govern every time the officers are involved in anything related to their job?
There's policies about, can you say that again?
Sure, there are policies that apply to everything that they do as far as their job.
That's not correct.
Okay? Are there policies, let me be more direct, are there policies dealing with where they get ammunition from?
Yes.
Okay. And the policies where they get ammunition from are either going to be given to them by the agency or get approved by the agency, correct?
Correct.
And that applies, there's no exception for that for a public demonstration, correct?
Correct.
There's no exception for that for a shoot, don't shoot, correct?
Correct.
So in the sense that there's not a policy written down that's titled, here's the policy for shoot, don't shoot ammunition, you already have one that should cover that scenario, right?
Correct.
In your time over the community services, you're also part of the planning meetings for further community events. In other words, when you schedule one out and plan one forward, correct?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay, and you were in part of the meetings when these issues were coming up as far as planning these citizens academies, correct?
Some of them, yes.
You're part of the command staff, correct?
Yes.
And as part of the command staff, when this incident, when this event was coming up, you were provided basically an invite to meetings with the itinerary attached, right?
Yes.
So prior to this happening, you, in the whole process of this, also are aware that there's an itinerary that's been done, right?
Yes.
You're aware of what's on the itinerary and what's not on the itinerary, right?
Yes.
And at any point, you didn't raise or implement some kind of new policy or secondary policy to go along with what the itinerary was, did you?
For this event?
Yes.
I don't believe I attended that meeting.
You knew that all the officers at this event, and you expected as well, that they would all comply with their training policy and follow state law.
Correct.
You also, in your capacity, serve as the person that does the final approval and authority when it comes to the budget, right?
The final approval and authority is with the chief of police, but yes, I run the day-to-day budget, yes.
Okay. So you're the budget person within there. I mean, you may come up and say, hey, we want to spend something on this, and he can tell you yes or no type of thing. Correct,
but I don't make all the approvals in the budget purchases.
You review it to put the data together, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So like if I'm a police officer working for you and I go buy something, you're going to see if I use a city card or a police officer credit card, you're going to see what I purchased, and you're going to put that data into some form so we can see what we're spending money on.
Correct.
You knew that the department did not purchase wad cutters at any point.
Correct.
And how long have you been doing the accounting for the Punta Gorda Police Department?
Probably 7 or 8 years.
And all that time, wad cutters never purchased, correct?
Correct.
You also knew the department purchased blanks.
Periodically, yes.
Okay. And so the purchase of blanks then is something that the department would purchase to provide for the officers that used blanks, correct?
Correct.
Likewise, in all the time that was there was no other, you were not part of any other policy issue governing the acquisition of blanks as far as which types to get or anything like that.
The blanks that were purchased, I generally was not the initial approval process. I was just the person who, after they had been purchased, would just process the paperwork to the finance department.
Right. And so therefore, again, as one of the second in command who knows about policy and actually does accreditation for other agencies, you are not limited to basically not ever have input. Actually, you actually give input to assist the chief, right?
Correct.
Okay. You're one of the people that he, in these meetings, is supposed to be able to count on to say, listen, what do you think about this? How should we do this? Give me your knowledge and experience. You've been doing it longer than me, right?
Correct.
When you reviewed this tape and went over it, would you agree with me that Lee Cole is on here when you said you saw him with the revolver, okay? Would you agree with me that one of the things you reviewed on here when he's with the revolver is when he's standing and talking to people, he's talking with his hands with the revolver in his hands?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Is that, you have a policy within the agency that instructs that any careless, flippant, or casual use or display of a firearm will constitute grounds for discipline, correct?
Yes.
That kind of conduct before this event with whoever he's talking to is not something that you as second in command, if you had seen it, would have approved of.
Correct.
Were you part of developing is there a form that you require all officers to fill out within your agency that is titled something like the Cardinal Rules of Firearm Safety for the Punta Gorda Police Department?
Yes.
Okay. Have you yourself, do you have to fill it out? What's the schedule of filling that out?
Every time you qualify on the range, you have to fill that out.
Okay. And that's so, and they qualify on the range, what?
A minimum once a year, yes.
Once a year, okay. Now, so that's something that everybody fills out. You actually fill it out, the chief has to fill it out, everybody has to say, I agree to these rules, right?
Correct.
One of those rules is do not point the weapon at anybody, correct?
Correct.
The other rule that's another rule that's on there is treat every weapon as if it's loaded, correct?
Correct.
For any demonstration, shoot, don't shoot scenario, or canine demonstration, or even going to a school and just speaking as officer friendly that there's not going to be anything but showing somebody this is what our belt looks like. Those rules apply across the board to all of us, correct?
Correct.
Officer never goes to a school just to give a speech if you get a report, raised his gun and pointed it and said ha-ha and smiled, be a problem, correct?
Correct.
You would agree with me that in all these scenarios, whether you're running them, chief's running them, Captain Woodard, whoever's there doing it, you have the right to expect that the officers are going to comply with the policies.
Correct.
When you reviewed this video, up until the point of what happened here, everything appeared to you to be very routine, correct?
Correct.
You gave a tour that night?
Yes.
All right. And so when you gave the tour, what was Chief Lewis doing?
Doing the same.
Okay. Do you know what was happening outside as far as the preparation for the shoot, don't shoot scenario scene?
No.
Okay. After the tours, where did you go?
I believe everybody migrated over to the area where we're doing the static display.
Okay. And what was Chief Lewis doing during the static display?
I believe he was present over there talking with the citizens.
Okay. And again, do you know what was being done to prepare the shoot, don't shoot scenario?
No.
Did you see Jeff Woodard giving any type of presentation during the static display?
Not that I recall.
Did you see Jeff Woodard give any type of tour to anybody during the static display?
Not that I recall.
When you first heard the shots, that wasn't unexpected for you for the scenario, correct?
Correct.
You knew there was going to be some kind of noise to signal the civilian that, okay, that's the point where the person would have shot a gun.
Correct.
You would agree with me when you said earlier that Lieutenant Heck, she was the coordinator of the event, right?
Correct.
Now, you saw the itinerary and looked at the itinerary, correct?
Correct.
Now, under the shoot, don't shoot, there were 4 names listed. I think you talked about it before, right?
Correct.
One of them was Lee Cole, right?
Correct.
He was a role player, correct?
Yes.
The other one was Shane Chodakowski, and he was a role player, right?
Correct.
Neither of those men had a role in giving speeches to the group, right?
Correct.
Neither of those men did static displays, right?
Correct.
And neither of them gave tours, right?
Correct. But I do believe, I will say, that I believe Shane Chodakowski was part of the static display.
Okay, so he may have been the static display
Yes.
before this happened. Okay. And he also would have been in the second scenario, the guy that's just kind of pushing, right? He doesn't ever have to pull a gun or anything.
I don't know what the scenarios were supposed to be, but that
Okay.
presumably yes.
So, third name on there was Tom Lewis, correct?
Yes.
And you knew Tom Lewis, from what you reviewed on here, is the person narrating, and with the crowd, narrating what's going on over the scenario, right?
Correct.
Fourth name on there was Lieutenant Salzman, right?
Correct.
You know Lieutenant Salzman is the training officer, right?
Correct.
Training officer is in charge of what?
Training officers are in charge of all of our advanced training, our specialized training, internal training like in-service and so forth.
What about the armory?
Correct. Oversees the armory.
Right?
Yep.
And where do we keep these ammunition weapons before the scenarios?
They were kept in the armory.
Okay. So, Lieutenant Salzman, then, you were not part of coming up with who the personnel was going to be for shoot, don't shoot, right?
Correct.
That was a decision made by Katie Heck.
I don't know who the decisions were made by.
Okay, well, if she's the community services person, I think you testified earlier, you expect that she would be
I,
part of
I
it.
would expect that she would make those decisions, yes.
You would agree with me, because you're sitting in the position of interim chief right now, while this is going on, correct?
Correct.
And that anybody in the position of chief, or interim chief, or acting chief, you have a right, just like Chief Lewis had a right, to delegate responsibilities for other people to carry out, correct?
Correct.
And you have a right, when you do that, to expect that they're going to do what you told them to do, right?
Correct.
Or understood they would do, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you do that, you also have a right to expect that they're going to comply with whatever policies, training, even normal routine functioning that you would expect from that, correct?
Correct.
When you mentioned that, let's talk about the weapon that Lee Cole used. You determined, you said on direct, you determined that the weapon was not a weapon that he had approved within the system, correct?
I don't know if the weapon that he had used that night was an approved weapon.
Okay. So explain to the jury then, because you said there's 2 steps to it. The first step to use a weapon that it's a secondary weapon, and explain what secondary means.
Secondary weapon may be a weapon that you carry on your person in another place besides your duty weapon. Usually it's concealed somewhere.
Okay. And so the Glocks are the primary weapons, right?
Correct.
So if someone wanted to carry a revolver on them, that'd be a secondary weapon.
Correct.
So the first step that has to do is who has to seek approval to carry a particular weapon?
The officers has to seek approval.
Okay. And how do they seek approval?
They fill out an authorization form and submit it.
Okay. And how many times a year is an informational blast, whether it's through your email system or whether it's through meetings, how many times a year are you aware that officers are reminded about registering any secondary weapons?
Once a year.
Okay. And once the approval thing is submitted by the officer, what's the next step?
It's got to be approved by the chief of police.
Okay.
There's got to be an approval to make sure that everything complies with our policies and procedures.
So none of that comes to perhaps, let's say, you in the interim chief position or him in the chief position unless the officer files it to put it in the process for you to see, correct?
Correct.
Let's say it gets approved by a chief. There's a secondary part, correct?
Correct.
And the secondary part is what?
You have to qualify with that firearm.
And that means what?
Means you have to go to the range, you have to demonstrate proficiency with it.
Okay. So, in your agency, is there any question from your knowledge as far as the information presented to the officers, of which Lee Cole was one of them, that there was plenty of opportunity to explain to Lee Cole this process?
This was a process that I would think every officer would be aware of.
Now, you have never been personally involved in setting up a shoot, don't shoot event, correct?
Correct.
You've never been personally involved in coordinating one,
Correct.
and you've never been personally involved in constructing one, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you were not part of the, I take it, the meetings or anything when Chief Arnell brought, were you there when Chief Arnell brought this in as far as the actual time he came in and mentioned it?
I don't recall.
You weren't part of any of the meetings with anybody or have information about that as to how that was implemented through Lieutenant King or through Community Services or any other officer for that matter?
I don't recall how it was originally implemented.
Okay. That night, you're seeing the video also. You're actually out there, correct?
Yes.
And when you're out there, you would agree with me that if you saw anything that caused you to have a concern for someone's safety, you have an independent duty on your own to act and speak up about it, right?
Correct.
It's not something where you go, well, I'm not the safety officer, so somebody else can deal with it, correct? All right. And that's the rule for all the officers out there, correct?
Correct.
Now, you saw Ms. Knowlton talking to the chief prior to this event with the crowd, right?
Yes.
And you saw the chief talking to her about the proper way to handle this ammunition, correct?
Correct.
Now, were you aware that Ms. Knowlton had been in the training room with Jeff Woodard and the other participant before coming out to see the chief?
Yes.
Were you present for those?
Was I
At that
present
time,
in the
were they
training
there
room?
in the training room?
No.
Okay. But you saw him bring them out?
Yes.
And when you saw him coming out, Captain Woodard had the simunition gun, correct?
Yes.
Slide was back?
Yes.
You tell the jury what that means, the slide was back.
Slide was back indicates that the weapon is safe and there's no ammunition in it.
Okay. And he's doing this, and Chief Lewis is obviously in a position where he could have an opportunity to see that because he's approaching, correct?
Yes.
And the magazine was out, right?
Yes.
Tell the jury what the magazine out means.
Magazine is where you carry the bullets, and if the magazine's out, there's no bullets inside the gun.
Okay. And so when Captain Woodard came over to Chief Lewis, he presented the gun in the safe position and the magazine out, correct?
Yes, he did.
And you watched then as Chief Lewis then went over the safety with her about the gun again.
I was present out there, I don't know, but yes, I'm aware that happened, yes.
You saw him interacting, you
Yes.
don't know the exact words, but you could see he's doing something with the gun with Miss Knowlton.
Absolutely.
Okay. And after that, talking, did you then see Jeff Woodard take the gun?
I don't recall.
Okay. You yourself personally did not have any knowledge as to which officers had what duties that night regarding training or safety duty.
Correct.
Were you present in the morning when there was any conversation between Jeff Woodard and the chief or Lieutenant Salzman and the chief about participating later in the night?
Not that I recall.
You understand that in any scenario like this, this is a scenario that involved, 30, 40 people there?
Yes.
Okay. When you do normal training, there's a trainer per officer ratio, correct? That you try and strive for.
For certain types of training, yes.
Right, okay. And if those trainings involve anything like the officers are going to be firing things back at each other, those are usually smaller numbers, 1 to 5, 1 to 6, something like that.
Correct.
Okay. You would agree with me that when you have a large group of citizens here that are watching this, that it's going to require more than one person trying to observe everything to be safe for everybody. It requires a group of people to do this.
Correct.
Just Can I just have 1 moment?
You may.
There's one more part of the video I want to ask you about. There's a part of the video, did you see the part of the video where you are walking in what would be this direction, like coming towards me where the video is, like coming if you're walking from where, like closer to the building but coming towards where Lee Cole is by his car there, where you've got some papers in your hand. You remember that?
Yes.
Okay, were those papers the itinerary for the night?
I don't recall what they were.
Do you remember when you were doing that, giving somebody a nod and a movement to come in, and Jeff Woodard steps in with people?
Yes.
Okay, and what was, you were communicating to Jeff Woodard?
Correct.
And what were you telling Jeff Woodard?
I believe I was just asked to tell him to come outside.
Okay, so you were telling him we're ready to go?
Correct.
Tell me what it is.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, defense counsel mentioned the employee development coordinator who was Lieutenant Salzman at the time, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and he is involved, I believe he's in advanced and specialized training, correct? He oversees that?
Among other things, yes.
Was the shoot, don't shoot scenario a training?
It was a community event.
I mean, it was not a training?
Correct.
Who did Tom Lewis delegate the running of the shoot, don't shoot scenario to?
I don't know.
Who did Tom Lewis delegate safety checks to?
I don't know.
How many parts of the academy involved real weapons that were going to be used in a role-playing scenario?
I didn't know at the time any real weapons were going to be used. I was aware that the shoot, don't shoot scenario had weapons in it, though.
So was that the only part?
Correct.
So when, I guess, defense counsel mentions it takes a lot of people in order to run this and to make sure everything's safe, there was only one part of it, though, where weapons were being used, right?
Correct.
And I know you said you expect officers to comply with all policies, right?
Yes.
Do officers always comply with policies?
No.
And do you have to go through the approval process from the chief to get approval for a secondary weapon if he's the one that tells you to get the weapon?
I would assume that if anybody is directed to do something, they still have to follow the protocols to do it properly in accordance with our guidelines.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, so you may step down. Ladies and gentlemen, it's about 4:45, and I promised you yesterday that we would keep normal business hours, at least for the first few days. So I am going to release you for the evening. I'm going to remind you again, please do not discuss this case even amongst yourselves until the close of all of the evidence and testimony. Do not discuss this with your family, friends. Please do not look up anything on the internet, chats, websites, blogs, all of the electronic means. If anybody approaches you and wishes to speak about it, let them know that you are a juror. If they persist, notify us and we will take care of it. I'm going to have you back here a little before 9, I would say anywhere between 8:50, 8:55, somewhere around there, so we can start right at 9 o'clock. They'll direct you where you need to meet again in the morning. With that, you are excused for the evening. Thank you.
Just leave your notebooks on your chairs there, and I'll pick them up later. Make sure you grab your drink bottles or anything you have. That's right. You can have a deputy walk you down.
There's a hat underneath. I don't know if somebody wants it or... Oh, she's got it. Or a sweater.
Thank you. You too.
All right, court is in recess. I would say the same. I'd like to start right at 9 if we can, so just